Welcome to the Romance Fiction Club, where different romance authors come together to share their romance works. If you think our library is missing a romance genre you love, please let us know in the comments. We will do our best to make that content available. Please subscribe to the channel so we can keep creating free audiobooks for you to enjoy. Thank you so much for being with us, and have a wonderful listening.
This content is adapted in order to comply with YouTube's safe content guidelines and regulations. If you wish to read the full text containing all the steamy scenes, you can download the full unedited book from the link available in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. Enjoy your audiobook.
Beachside Kiss, a bad boy sports romance, written by Andy Wayne, USA Today Bestselling Author. Strauss Marketing was a beacon of corporate prestige, and Elena just landed a job as one of their top corporate liaisons. It was her job to represent some of the most powerful men and women on the West Coast. This was her opportunity to earn her fortune and find her place in Ocean Beach. Now that Diego had fully recovered from his injury, there was no excuse for the team manager to bench him. But George had a vendetta. He was going to keep Diego from coming back, even if it meant playing a losing lineup. Diego didn't want to give up his dream, and it wouldn't have been fair for Elena to expect him to do so. But if he was going to get back on the field, he was going to have to play for somebody else. That meant moving, giving up on Strauss Marketing and finding a new beginning. Elena couldn't choose between the man that she loved and the future she was building, but there might not be any other way. Chapter 1. Nothing could just be an Ocean Beach. A restaurant wasn't just a restaurant. It was a gourmet destination. Schools were premier academies, and coffee shops were innovative workplace solutions. Even buildings had to be something more than they really were. Architects and engineers would work their whole lives for the opportunity to enhance the legendary coastline. Elena wasn't walking up to just any office building. This was the Fernanda Strauss Business Complex, home to Strauss Marketing. It was built from designer glass and steel, plaster made by only the hardest-working Chinese children, under the care of the harshest quality control departments in the world. There were palm trees, bean-shaped swatches of grass, and purple and yellow marigolds. On either side of the entrance, there were terracotta pots filled with custom-designed flower arrangements, made especially for the owner. Fernanda had to personally interview Elena before she'd be allowed on the premises. There were 2 security checkpoints, one at the main gate and another at the parking garage. Elena would have to carry her ID at all times, and of course there was a pair of guards behind the front desk, eyeing anyone that dared to come close. The world's largest corporations relied on the firm to give them access to their vital West Coast demographic. There were more than 30 departments in the building, all of them gateways that needed to be protected, because if a single one of them failed, a segment of the economy could fall with it. Parents would groom their children to get into the company. To even be allowed in the building was an achievement. Elena wasn't supposed to be there, but she was in a unique position. The city's most famous athlete was her lover, and she was the former head of PR for his team, the Ocean Hawks. That put her on the 3rd floor, below the demigods, and the one true goddess herself, Fernanda. Elena would be one of 2 public liaisons, working directly with the corporations to help them utilize the firm's services. She didn't fully realize the magnitude of what she would be doing until she stepped into the elevator. It was a glass capsule, completely transparent, and it shot up into the air like a rocket. She was ascending into the heavens, traveling higher than any mortal man could possibly go. Below her feet was Fernanda's private beach, an inconsequential strip of sand, and all around her, a view of the water. From this height, it wasn't the magnificent beast she'd become acquainted with. It was just a black, rippling band, disappearing into the skyline. The true shock came when the doors opened, and she realized that half of this floor, this ivory and jade palace, was hers. It was a plain white corridor, with bamboo planters and white orbs hanging from the ceiling. It opened out into the lobby where a jungle painting was hanging above the front desk. White and green, prosperity, prestige. The colors weren't an accident. Everything that Fernanda did was planned out years in advance and adjusted according to outside stimuli. She might as well have been using a time machine for all of the insight she exhibited. A young woman was standing in front of the desk, her face lit up by the tablet she was holding. She came to life, like an android detecting the presence of its owner. "Are you Elena?" "Yes, I am." "I'm Alma. Your office is on the right." She motioned to a door beside the front desk. "Ms. Marshall's is on the left. I've sent your appointment schedule to the company email. Is there anything that you need? Diamond water?" "I'd like to speak with Lauren, if that's possible," Elena said. Alma met her eyes and shook her head. "Well, if there's nothing else..." Alma gave her a look as if to say, "Good luck," and retreated behind the desk. There were supposed to be training seminars and ridiculous retreats, something to teach Elena what to do. It wasn't that she didn't know the business or have a basic understand of what her job entailed. She just wasn't used to the lack of structure. There was a strenuous hiring process. Elena was given a quick introduction and a momentary meeting with Fernanda. Then there was a series of uncomfortable medical and psychological tests. Elena was glad to be done with it. The company's legal team was present during every meeting. They explained to her after the interview that she wouldn't be allowed to know the names of her clients until her first day. It was for confidentiality. In order to see the list, she would have to sign each client's NDA and send it back. Then it would be released. She scrolled through each one, using her mouse and signature pad. Her eyes were heavy, and the imprint from the monitor stuck to the back of her eyelids, so that every time she blinked, she'd see it. When she finished, she sat back in her chair and took a second to clear the haze. She was supposed to be visiting with Lauren. Meeting her would clear all of the questions up. Maybe Fernanda wanted her to learn on her own. The phone rang, and she let her chair down. "Strauss Marketing, this is Elena." She hated using her customer service voice. "Please tell me you're not some snotty witch with a stick up her ass." There was a sigh. "I told Fernanda to get me somebody normal." Elena laughed. "Lauren?" "Yes, oh thank God. My booze level is dangerously low and I've got to get out of here. Let's go." The line went dead, and there was a short pause before the tall blonde walked inside, holding a lit cigarette. Elena could see her holding an electric guitar, singing on stage. "Can we smoke in here?" Elena stood up and grabbed her phone. "If we're on this floor," she pointed at the ground, "we can do anything." Don't tell me you're one of them purity chicks." Lauren cocked her head and raised an eyebrow. "Nothing but kisses till you're married?" "No, You must be shocked, I know. I'm a devil." "Honestly," Elena shook her head, "you're a refresher." "Good. I'm still sober. Come on." There was nothing womanly or delicate about her, and Elena loved it. She felt like she could relax and lean against the wall when they got into the elevator. "Tell me who to watch out for." "Just put your corporate face on. You'll be fine." "Nobody in particular." "Everyone." Lauren met her eyes. "Are you kidding?" "I don't know." "Our clients are sociopaths," she said. "Textbook, every single one of them. Just don't open your mouth too much. Make them think they're going to make money." "Results?" Elena stepped out into the lobby. Lauren shrugged. "There's no guarantees. Just don't tell them that." She kept quiet until they left the lobby. "When I first got here, they had me marketing designer baby doll clothes. It'd be $1,500 for a piece of cloth. You can't always give these people what they want." "Oh, another woman." She shook her head and took out another cigarette. She wanted to sell diamond water. Water with diamonds that she infused with the energy from the moon. Stuff sold for $3,000 a bottle. "Dear Lord," Elena laughed. Lauren's face lit up with a wicked grin when she flicked the lighter. This lady, she came in wearing a white robe, holding a triangle. She'd hit it when she walked, and she'd chant. She said she was infusing the world. How did she even get in the building? Damn if I know. Lauren took a drag, and the smoke flew out behind them as they walked side by side down the path towards the parking garage. She directed Elena to a small white brick building a few blocks away. There was patio furniture, ashtrays, and the distinct smell of mesquite grilled chicken. They took a seat outside, and she ordered herself a taco while Lauren went through the list. I've got Palace at 1. They're trying to make this new espresso. Tastes like diaper mash, but it's popular in some of the upscale clubs in the foothills. Then there's Bo's Power Juice. They're trying to expand their range to senior citizens, so I'm marketing it as a memory aid. Is that legal? Psst, it's so underregulated nobody will even know. You think the cops troll that crap? I don't know, Elena said. Then we've got AppsLine, a total wreck. They build games for smartphones and they barely work, so they never make any money. But they keep coming because they're gullible, or their boss makes them. I don't know. What's wrong with them? They've got this marketing director, Marcos. He's convinced himself that he's going to lead the young generation into a new era, and he keeps calling me with these crazy ideas about how to reach them. You can have him. Really? You're going to make me do that? I'm hazing you. She took a drink of her beer and set it down. Then she reached under the table and pulled up an invisible stiletto with her best battle face. Damn you. She deserved it. That was badass. You should have drawn blood. I can't believe that reporter accused you of sabotaging your boyfriend's game. He was in the hospital for Christ's sake, and she showed up in front of the lobby pulling that crap. What's your point? If you can handle sports, you can handle these people. They're sharks, but at least they pretend to be civil. I don't buy it. Elena took a bite of her taco and set it down. Who did Fernanda give you? It's all liquor, she said. The overflow. Why do you call them that? Fernanda. Lauren used a fake Italian accent when she said the name. Preferred to send them to the interns. I call them the acolytes. But they've been complaining, so she had them sent over to our department. So we could market liquor, Elena reaffirmed. What did you expect? It's Ocean Beach. Lauren explained the different companies, their take on the market, who they were looking to reach, and their preferred methods of doing so. Elena listened, taking mental notes as they went through the information. She wouldn't have to work very hard to boost their sales. Liquor wasn't something that needed to be marketed. She'd spend the day learning about her clients and researching them to match them up to services. That would require hours of reading market research studies and learning about the different departments. Rather than taking a training course, Elena was being given a task and the means to research how to perform it. That way, she could grow. The studies would be available to her, and there was a directory of departments that she could read over. It was clear that she was meant to learn through experience. Chapter 2. Luther, Diego's pit bull, was 100 pounds of sheer muscle, but he seemed to think that he was the size of a chihuahua. He jumped onto the bed and laid right down on Elena's chest. His tongue flicked across her face, and she shot upright. Luther, no! Come here, boy. Diego casually rolled over and patted the bed. The dog hopped over Elena and landed at Diego's feet, shaking the mattress as he did. I'm sorry, Diego said. I don't mind. Elena stood up to stretch, succinctly aware of the fact that he was eyeing her naked body. His finger brushed down her spine, sending an electric pulse falling down her back. You're not leaving, are you? He asked from behind her. She didn't realize that she'd forgotten to breathe until she opened her mouth to speak. I have the day off. Good. He was sitting on the edge of the bed. He curled his arm around her waist and rested his hand just below her breast. Then his lips met the small of her back, and she was ready to burst into flames. I'm going to get showered. She stepped out of reach and pulled her robe on. Can I join you? He sprang out of bed, shirtless with his hips swaying as he prowled closer. It was both adorable and predatory. He had a wicked smile and a smooth-shaved head. Nope. She closed the bathroom door on him. Before she met Diego, she considered her morning ritual an obligation. She'd climb out of bed, ingest as much coffee as she could, and scrub herself down. Then she'd tie up her hair and pick out something decent. She cared about how she looked, but only because it mattered in business. She wanted to look clean and reasonably professional, but she didn't take the time to perfect her appearance. She never painted her nails. They were stubs with frayed cuticles and jagged edges. Her dark hair was wispy, and it laid wrong. She didn't care what other people thought. She still didn't, and she never would. She cared about Diego's reaction and the way he watched her, how he'd stop and smile at all the right times, as if he'd been hit by an exciting burst of lightning. It was like having her panties climb up between her legs or being caught off guard when she crossed her legs just right. She was addicted to the feeling, and she never wanted to lose it. That's why she allowed herself to dip into her designer closet and spend some extra time making sure that her hair fell right. He'd love her, and he'd watch her no matter what. But enhancing the effect was like getting her daily fix. She couldn't help it, and neither could he. When she stepped into the bedroom, he was laying on his back with his arms folded behind his head, waiting to see her step out. He looked away when she noticed, and jumped up, letting the blanket fall off his naked body so he could pass her to get into the bathroom. She had to watch him walk around like that and admire the way his hips moved. That's why he did that. She was going to have to retaliate. She knew he wouldn't be able to resist a trip to the beach if he saw her laying out in the sand when he walked into the kitchen. She changed into her bikini and pulled out a bottle of strawberry-scented sunscreen. The smell made her smile. It was like candy, and it was creamy when she rubbed it on. She took out a blanket and laid it out in the sand, just beneath the veranda steps, so he could see every detail of her body. Soon, she knew, she'd hear the back door and he'd walk outside. She laid back, closed her eyes, and waited for him. When she started to grow impatient, she checked back. If the sheer curtains hanging over the French doors were moving, he'd seen her. The force of his body moving would make them sway. If he'd been outside, the silk-white curtains on the veranda would be moving. The wind was dead, and they were perfectly still. He must have taken the side exit, through the living room. He was walking up the beach with Luther running ahead of him, and he was wearing a pair of white swimming trunks with a matching baseball cap swung to the side. He had a way of smiling, like the first clear day of spring. It came on with a shocking, consistent flare that caught her eyes and stuck in her core, spreading throughout her body. It was infectious, and she couldn't help it. Her smile was involuntary, infuriating. She knew she had the same effect on him, but he did it better. He brought the light, and he knew it. Just a look, and her plan of seducing him was completely shattered. He was going to take control. He ducked down, picked a stick up off the ground, and threw it towards the water. Luther caught it before it got lost in the tide, and he began thrashing away, tearing it into splinters. Then Diego shook his head and sped up. He loved to sprint now that his leg had healed. It was beautiful, seeing his chest tense up and his arms flex. He hadn't lost a single bit of the exuberance everyone thought was gone when he injured his leg. It was like he'd never gotten hurt at all. He stopped in front of her, let his eyes pass down her body, and lunged forward. She jolted back, just in time to have him wrap his arms around her and cradle her head so that she didn't feel the impact when they fell back into the sand. He dug his knee between her legs with a sharp intake of breath. He growled. "Get off me." She struggled to squirm away. He took her hands and pinned them behind her head. Then he dove down and crashed their lips together. The force of it caught her breath, and her eyes fell closed. She didn't need air, not when she had his kiss. "You need love." He pulled up and brushed a finger down her jawline. "You're too good. I want you excited, smiling, hermosita." His little gorgeous one. Well, maybe I want to make you feel that way too. "What makes you think I don't?" He rolled over onto his back. "I don't care. I want more, Elena said. More smiling, more laughter. Hey! He braced himself to stand up, grabbed her by the hands, and wrenched her off the ground. What are you doing? He shook his head, and without a word, pulled her into his arms. There was no reason to talk. They didn't need to. They knew what the other was thinking, and what they wanted. They met each other's needs effortlessly, with the dedicated care of experienced lovers. When they were clean and dressed, he led her downstairs where a platter of grilled chicken and vegetables was waiting for them. Diego's lifestyle, though lavish, was like anyone else's. He cooked all of his own meals, and he did his own shopping. He cleaned. But there were silent presences creeping about the house. He had security and people to pick up the chores. Elena rarely saw them. She mostly forgot that they existed. This made their meal a welcome surprise. It was also another gesture that she couldn't reciprocate. They ate and laid out together on the veranda where he had a plush cushion surrounded by sheer curtains, a little table, and a fire pit sitting in between them and the beach, so that Elena could watch the water through the filter of the silk and dancing flames. When he finished eating, he laid back. She rested her head on his chest, tracing her fingers down his bare stomach while she rose up and down with his breath, like a boat on calm waters. "How do you like work?" he asked. "Well, they're the best firm in town, and they treat me well." "Do they?" "Mm-hmm," Elena replied with a lazy smile. "They don't make you hustle?" "No," she laughed. "We went out to lunch and we talked. There's meetings, sales sessions where we introduce our clients to our services. That's about it." "Easy stuff." "Yeah," she said. "It's relieving. I mean, the clients aren't the best people, but it's not like I'm fighting off mobs of angry reporters like before." "No high heels," he laughed. "I'd like to forget that happened." "It was funny?" "Hey," he added when she looked up at him. "I don't mean it like that. I am working hard for respect in this city, and it seems like all I get is ridicule." "I wouldn't." "Not you," Elena laid back down. "It's Ocean Beach. There's something wrong with it. It's plastic surgery, labels, and names. I hate it." "I know," he said. "I only came here for the team." He took a breath, and they lost themselves in the crackling of the flames. "Are they going to let you back on?" "I called George 3 times yesterday. 3 times. "What about Francine?" "She hung up on me until I threatened to keep calling over and over." "She's probably going to buy a gun now," Elena said. "No, she can't touch me. I'm on contract. I can run better than before. All that work I've put in. You know I'm beating my old times on the track." "Really?" The human body could only do so much. As one of the Football League's best players, Diego was already pushing himself to his limits. "Yup," he said. "Did you talk to George?" "Francine stormed off the 3rd time I called. She set the phone down, and I heard her screaming at George. She'd been trying to keep me away because she was still mad about you. He finally just told her to back off." "So?" "I have a meeting with him," Diego said. "Thank God. We should have known she'd do that. I mean, the woman's a grudge holder. So she's gonna have to get over it because when I go in there, I'm taking names. They did me wrong, twice now." "You're right," Elena said. "You need to be appreciated. Is he really acting in the team's best interest by keeping you off the field?" "You saw them last season. As soon as he benched me, all they did was lose. That's not going to put people in the stadium. It's shitty business." "Right," Elena agreed. "So why is he doing it?" "Because I wanted to take him to court when he wouldn't let me file an injury claim." "You're taking the fall for his mistakes," Elena balked. "And because he doesn't like us." "After you saved his life?" she scoffed. "You really think his son was going to kill him?" "Hard to say," she said. "I don't care. Leaving that office was one of the best things I've ever done. I don't regret it." She closed her eyes. They both fell silent. The flames were getting low, and the sun was beginning to edge across the western horizon. Chapter 3. They called it the eclectic 6th Avenue Street Fair. Elena laughed when she heard the name. It was like putting lipstick on a crack old lady. It didn't matter how much they decorated it. The pavement would still be cracked, and thugs would still be walking the streets with their women sticking to the curb alongside them. She watched the procession while she hunted down a parking space. Red sequins, fake pink boas, cheap mid-rift tops barely concealing protruding ribs. There were working women, drug dealers, and their customers, holding cardboard signs on street corners. Elena parked 3 blocks away in a small lot across the street from a bright pink house where a group of prostitutes congregated on the sidewalk, sharing a blunt. Elena wasn't sure this was the right place. There were luxury sedans, sports models, and SUVs, but no bright yellow sports cars. She was just about to call Chelsea when somebody tapped on her window, and she turned to see her friend waving. She was wearing a white sundress draped over her swelling baby bump. Donovan was leaning against the car. He was as thin as bamboo and as white as her paint job. He had a dark designer cut, and he was smoking one of his toothpick-thin cigarettes. He gave her a wave. Elena stepped out to give them hugs. Chelsea was standing with her back to the sun, casting a halo of light that surrounded her pixie blonde hair. "You are a star, you know." "Really?" Elena asked, surprised. "Everyone knows what you did," Donovan said. "What did I do?" Elena locked her door. "You work on the 3rd floor of the largest company in town," Donovan said. "What else?" "I'm surprised is all." Elena led them through the lot. "How do people know where I work?" "Everyone talks," Donovan said. "They always do." "Doesn't matter." Elena dodged a cluster of designer housewives in a circle on the sidewalk. The smell of weed and street food stuck in the wet air. Donovan flicked his cigarette out onto the street. He pulled out another and lit it. Elena had never seen him chain-smoking before. "I will scream it to the world," he said. "I am an entrepreneur and an artist. Anyone who says otherwise is a fool, and they aren't worth my time." "Exactly." Chelsea took a glance up the street to admire the line of tents set up in the middle. The fair was a place for local artisans to showcase their goods. It was mostly domestics selling their crafts, but they were true masters. The 3 past displays filled with essential oils, bath salts, and perfume while they edged closer to 14th Street. Chelsea narrated the event for them. "They have the best natural shampoo," she said, motioning to a purple tent filled with dried herbs and shelves of homemade goods. "Then there's these rootwood clocks," Chelsea said. "They are so unique. I've never seen anything like them before. You see the same ones every single year." "I know, right?" Donovan gave her a grin. "I think we should take a look." "They're tacky. Come on," he herded her past. "What about these?" Chelsea stopped at the next tent, pointing out sculpted candles. She was eyeing a hummingbird with a wick sticking out of its beak. "Sounds like something an old woman would put on a china hutch." "I don't know," Elena said, admiring a miniature wizard. He was holding a crystal ball with a tiny butterfly in the center. "Do you like them?" The vendor came up behind them. "I love them," Chelsea said. "How much for the bird?" $200. Donovan coughed, and Chelsea's smile went neutral. "That's too bad. Another year." "What about you?" She turned her attention to Elena. "Oh no, I'm just looking." "I have some smaller designs as well." She ducked down under the display table to pull out a plastic bin. When she opened it, Chelsea's eyes went wide with excitement. "These are amazing." She reached in to pull out a purple heart with an intricate Celtic knot design on the front. "They're only 15, the vendor said. "And they're cute, too." "They really are nice," Elena said. "Do you sell them online or—" "I try," she replied with an awkward laugh. "That's how it goes," Chelsea said. Nobody likes nice things anymore. Too true, Donovan agreed. Yeah. I'm probably not coming back next year, but if you want to check things out online, I have a website. You're quitting? Chelsea asked as she pulled out her phone. It's time to move on and get a real job. Yeah. Elena nodded. She went back to looking over the display while Chelsea took down the website. When they were done, they moved on to the next tent where Chelsea swooned over abstract paintings, mostly gradients with lines of paint like drops of rain sliding down a windshield. There were angelic glass figures, dragons, unicorns, and a million different kinds of birds. Every tent they passed was another failing spectacle. As they started getting closer to the end of the block, Donovan began to complain. His feet hurt, and he wanted to sit down. Elena was tired of walking too, so they found a stand that sold food and picked a table nearby to take a seat. Chelsea had a vanilla ice cream cone with a bright red cherry on the top. She plopped it in her mouth. Everything's so nice. I'm thinking of getting one of those fairy tapestries, Elena said. It's too busy, Donovan sighed. There's no taste, no refinement. Nobody wants good art. I'll bet your dresses would sell here, Elena said. Ugh, he scoffed. I would never. It's not like anyone's buying them, Chelsea said. He squared his jaw and took a drink from his giant frozen lemonade. That's not fair. No. Elena didn't believe that. He was the most popular designer in the city, and nobody wanted to buy a thing that he sold. It's true, he shrugged. Nobody wants a Donovan. They're on to Nico. Nico? Elena's face went sour. He only does black and red. He's saying he might add white, but he can't decide. That's just a trend, Chelsea said. People won't work with him forever. Doesn't matter. Why not? Elena asked. Because House of Donovan is being sold. I have a buyer. Whoa. Chelsea's mouth dropped open. House of Donovan was his salon and design studio where he did all of his work. What are you going to do? Elena asked. That's your life. What am I supposed to do? Number 1 is gone. When did she leave? Chelsea flicked her tongue out and licked away a swirl of ice cream. I don't talk about the dead. He went back to his lemonade. There was a reason I kept Alice as number 3 for so long. She smelled like roast beef, and I hated it. Elena stifled a laugh. What? He glared at her. She was the best one, Chelsea said. She was the last to leave, and I'll bet she had a darn good reason. Well, it's not because I fired her. She betrayed me. I never fire a good girl, not like George. What do you mean, not like George? Elena caught Chelsea turning away. No. Donovan nodded. Men. No, not men, Chelsea said. No real man would fire a pregnant single woman. That's what pigs do. She went from receptionist to director of PR. Elena couldn't hide her shock. Now she's almost unemployed. George is crazy. He's firing all the wrong people. And Nico, Donovan rolled his eyes. He's arrogant. I'm screwed, and Ethan, she looked down at her baby bump. You know, I might just speak with an agency, see about giving him up. Or burn that stadium to the ground, Elena said. We've all considered that. Donovan set his cup aside and reached into his pack of cigarettes. Then I'll have nowhere to work. I shouldn't have come. Chelsea wiped aside an incognito tear. I knew that I'd want to buy everything, and I still did it because I thought it would be nice. It is nice, Elena said, and you are anything but weak. You'll find a way. What about child support? Donovan asked. There's a whole process, Chelsea said, and it won't even be enough to pay my electric. You'll still file, though, won't you? Elena asked. If I can find him. Donovan lit his cigarette and took a long pull. You're lucky, he pointed to Elena. Chelsea and Donovan both nodded and went back to their food. Things had gone from cheery and lighthearted to a dull dread. There was no major industry in Ocean Beach. It was all sales and services, and people were picky. They relied on reviews and word of mouth. Everyone wanted to know who was the it stylist, the right fashion designer, and where their girlfriends got those shoes. People who didn't have skills often found themselves relying on their looks. Chelsea was an intelligent, capable woman. She was the sweetest person that Elena had ever met, but she made bad choices. Rather than slave away in fast food restaurants for nothing, she decided to strip. That was the only way she could earn a living wage. She loved the craft fair. She told Elena that she went every year. It was her favorite thing to do. But now that the truth about what she was going through had come out, she lost her spark. She didn't want to look at anything. She just dragged her feet along until they'd reached the end of the block, and Elena was ready to hurl her into the sun to give her a dose of sunshine. "Hey," she pointed to the first place she saw. "Let's go in there." She regretted it immediately when Chelsea took her hand with a nod and led her across the street. They all knew Fergie's, the little thrift store on the corner, not because they sold nice things, or because they used to go shopping there. So far as Elena knew, none of them had ever bought anything inside. No, she knew this place because when times were desperate, she tried to sell everything she had there, and she failed. Now she was standing at the entrance, staring at the knick-knack shelves lining the walls, and the clothes racks in between them. The clerk turned to them with a smug smile. "How are you, Donovan?" "Katie." He gave her a nod and sniffed the air as if he smelled something disgusting. "Are you here to sell?" she asked. "No." "Right, too good for Fergie's, but you don't mind coming in for inspiration, do you?" "I like improving on old things." He cringed at the sound of Chelsea's voice. "This is nice." She was holding up a pair of faded jeans. "Let's go," he said. Katie turned back to a pile of clothes she was folding on the front counter. She had pink hair, gauged ears, and sleeve tattoos. She was elegant and trendy, but Donovan didn't like her edge. It was easy to see why they clashed. "I want to look around a little more," Chelsea said. "Looks like things aren't going very well for you." He pulled a help wanted sign from the window and replaced it. "I'm expanding." "To the landfill?" he asked with a sweet smile. "More inventory." Katie set aside the pair of jeans she was folding and marched up to him. "I reserve the right to refuse service to anyone." "I don't want your service, darling." "Then why are you here?" Something tugged on Elena's sleeve, and she turned to see Chelsea holding up a pair of white jeans with a lavender top. She motioned for Elena to follow her back to the changing room, which doubled as a utility room. "Tell me what you think." Elena waited, doing her best to ignore the bickering at the front of the store. When she came out, Elena was surprised. How do they fit so well? Chelsea pulled the waistband forward to show that they were elastic. "I can wear them to term, and when I have the baby, they'll still fit me. Isn't it a great idea?" "I think so. Now that I know what I need, I can come back for them when I have some money," she said. "Don't worry about that. I'll get them for you." Chelsea turned back without a response and disappeared inside. "How dare you? I am beauty in Ocean Beach." "You're a has-been, and I keep telling you, people here would love them." "I'm not selling anything to this." Donovan was talking loud enough that he almost drowned out the sound of Chelsea whimpering. "Chelsea," Elena knocked on the door. "I'm almost ready," she sniffed. "Are you decent?" Elena asked, careful to keep her voice low enough that nobody would hear. The sound of the door unlocking was a signal that she could come inside. When she did, she found Chelsea sitting on an overturned mop bucket with her head in her trembling hands. Her shoulders were shaking, and she was sobbing. Elena rested a hand on her back, and she swept it away. "Please don't buy me anything." "But," I said, "don't buy me anything." "And what?" "Because my son is not going to be raised in a welfare house." She stood up. "I'd rather abort." "You don't mean that." "I do." She wiped her eyes. "I want Ethan to have clothes and food and a place to stay, and I don't ever want him to have to worry about adult stuff, like rent and electric. I want to find a way, And if I can't, I will send him to somebody who can. There was a knock on the door. What are you two doing? You better not be stuffing your bags with clothes. I'll call the police. Chelsea opened her mouth to yell something, but she stopped when Elena placed a finger over her lips. Elena stepped outside, careful to step in front of the door to preserve some of Chelsea's dignity. "Where's Donovan?" she asked. "He left." "What are you two doing?" "My friend's trying on a pair of clothes." "Why were you in there with her?" Katie asked as Elena followed her along the aisle towards the register at the front of the store. "What are you doing? Trying to distract me while she shoves half the store in her bag? I'll run after her, and after the way he acted, I'll probably beat her ass for good measure." "You want to know why I was really in there?" "Yes." Elena sighed and leaned across the aisle to whisper, "That presumptive shoplifter is one of the sweetest girls I have ever met in my entire life, and she is in there crying because the place where she works hired her for her looks, and now they're going to fire her because she's pregnant." "You want me to give her a job, don't you?" Katie asked. Elena rolled with it. "She loves this place, and you need a cashier. She's not trouble, and I don't think Donovan is coming in here anytime soon." "Is she a druggie?" "No," Elena said. "Does she work? Is she going to come in here at noon complaining about shit?" "She's mild. She's always on time, and I've never seen her complain." "I don't want him coming in here," Katie said. "You better tell her that, and you make sure. I'm only doing this because I think it's so wrong the way they're firing her. I got a kid at home, and I know how hard that can be." "Will you give her leave? She's pretty far along." "I'll have to." "Thank you." "She better work. I'm not paying her to stand around. I've got a mountain of clothes, people coming in here every day, screwing up the racks. This shit ain't easy." "I know, and I wouldn't ask this if I didn't trust her. But I worked with her for a long time. She can handle this." The door opened up and back, and Chelsea came out holding her coveted clothes. Her head fell, and she hung them back up. "Please don't tell her I did this. She'd hate me." Katie nodded and walked around the other side of the desk so she could approach her. "You would look so good in this." She took a white t-shirt with a strawberry on the front off the rack. Chelsea followed her and nodded along while Katie talked to her and asked her questions, under the pretense of showing her things to try on. When she finally did get around to telling her about how she needed a new cashier, Chelsea was interested enough in the store to offer to take over the position. She had no idea what had happened. It wasn't charity, not in any sense, but she still wouldn't appreciate what Elena did, not right away. Chapter 4. Alma walked into the office carrying a black velvet bag and a bottle of water. She set them both on Elena's desk and unscrewed the cap. The person who made this up should be institutionalized. She reached into the bag and pulled out 2 quartz crystals that had been buffed to look like diamonds. She placed them in the water and replaced the lid. "Margot is going to cancel her contract with us," Elena informed her. "Good, because I'm tired of having to explain what this stuff is. Every time I get to the part where I say it's infused with healing white energy, they look at me like I need an extra dose of antipsychotics." "I agree." Elena took a deep breath. "Can you see anything that they might notice?" "They're going to scrutinize you no matter what, and they're always going to find something. Just play it off and do your best to convince them that you're going to make them money." "What did Lauren say?" Alma sighed. "Go to hell. There is no way I'm talking to that witch. Tell Elena I'm sorry and good luck, but she can eat shit." "Fernanda makes you recite everything we say word for word, doesn't she?" Alma pushed the water across the table. They were making all the employees drink it when there were clients around. It was part of the marketing package they were offering Margot. "Jesus," Elena gave it a dirty look. "Do I actually have to swallow this?" Fernanda said, "You tell them that they better shove it down their gullets, and don't put vodka in Lauren's bottle." "Does Lauren do that?" Elena asked. "No, she's not even that bad. Are you ready? They're waiting outside, you know." "Yes, let me just..." Elena took another breath. What is wrong with you? They're the biggest client I've dealt with since they hired me. I need this to go well. I'm going to get chewed out if you don't hurry. Let's go. Alma snapped a finger and strode up to the door with Elena following behind her. Henrica Marquez was the perfect image of what it meant to be a career woman, circa 1985. She had 3-foot-tall black hair, red lipstick, and pointed shoulder pads. Diamond water? Alma came up to the desk and motioned to the fridge like a model at an auction. Hey, she turned her attention to Elena. Where the hell have you been? I thought our appointment was at 3:30. It's 3:32, Alma called out. Get your receptionist. Alma, could you go somewhere else, please? You know what? No, it doesn't matter. I didn't come here to sit in some tiny office. We need liquor. Henrica was a legend. Alma told her that once she pushed her head of accounting down the stairs for telling her that she should cut back on expensive lunches. Elena could believe that. She expected to be taken to a restaurant. Instead, Henrica took her to a tower downtown. The top floor, a domed glass structure, had been filled with buffet lines and shelves of nothing but her family's tequila. There was crab, 1,000 different varieties of shrimp, fish, lobster, every seafood dish imaginable, and of course, desserts. It was all there for Henrica's personal enjoyment. Elena made a plate with a respectful amount of food and took a token drink back to the table. When she sat down, she watched Henrica use her thick fingers to crack open a crab claw. There's a reason I don't let anyone in the company do marketing, you know. She pulled a strip of meat out and dipped it in butter sauce, spilling the gooey substance onto tablecloth as she did. Do you know why? Elena shook her head. Because they're stupid. She plopped the meat in her mouth and moved on to the next claw. They don't understand the product. It's my husband. He's the one that handles the hiring. It's my job to make sure the numbers line up. We're a private company, you know. Really? She speared a piece of shrimp, and Elena made a concerted effort not to flinch. You did know that, didn't you? Of course. Good, because I need somebody who knows what we're trying to do here. Money, Elena said. No, liquor is fun. That's the first thing you need to learn. It's not drunken brawls and bums drinking themselves to death. That's not what we're offering out customers. We're offering them a way to let loose, get out and enjoy their lives for a change. Most of our customers are already drinkers. They go to the convenience store every night, buy themselves a pint and go home. We're reaching them. We don't have to try with those fucks. The people we need to reach are the desperate housewives, the angry workers, people that need to release tension in their lives. You understand? Elena nodded and lifted her beer to her sealed lips. You're the woman that we're trying to reach. Look at you. You're pretending to drink. You're not going to work out. No. What? Of course not. You know nothing about us and… Wait. Elena held up a brave little finger. Now I have options. Well-researched, tried and true. She guzzled down the rest of her beer and set it down. Henrica plopped a shrimp in her mouth. Go on. Yep, you're right that you need to work on reaching people that don't usually drink, which is why you've been focusing on television. Right in their living rooms. But TV is out, Elena said. People don't watch it the way they used to. They're streaming shows and movies, ad-free. You need to get into their pockets. You mean by taking their money? No, I mean their phones. Housewives are one of the largest demographics for mobile apps. They get bored, so they move bricks around. They build mobile farms, and every few minutes they see ads. It's the same with stressed office workers, one of your largest potential demographics. They don't have time to play games. That's silly. Henrica set her napkin down. Just hear me out. All right. These guys are always reaching for their phones because they always have access to them and they're forbidden. They hide them under their desks. They duck into the bathroom. This is their secret pleasure. Elena held up her phone for Henrica to see. And when they're at work, pissed and ready to kill everyone they look at, what do you think they're going to do when they see an ad for your Marquez tequila? Go home and get drunk. That's not much, but it's enough for the moment. We'll start small. If there's results, we'll continue. Now take a shot with me. Elena took one and excused herself to get back to the office. When the day ended, the last thing she wanted to think about was dinner with Diego. She'd rather just take a shower and go to bed, maybe spend some time in front of the TV. He messaged her halfway back to the house, and she pulled out her phone to check it when she stopped at a light. Lobster? No lobster, no scampi, no crab, no steak. She was going to have to turn down their meal together. He was probably on the phone with some local fishery, ordering a fresh-caught beast with a list of spices on the counter beside him. Something light, she messaged back. Then she added, late lunch. Fire, he said. She turned on her favorite track and rolled down her windows so she could snake through the hills. Behind her, the smog formed a thick, hazy beast that perpetually hung over the city. She could see it through her rearview mirror, illuminated by the spotlights from the convention center downtown and the Big One Stadium, along with millions of tiny, inconsequential beams that got lost the further out she traveled. She wasn't leaving Ocean Beach behind, not technically, but she was escaping the traffic and the noise. Even when she was inside, alone with nobody else around her, she could sense it. There was this consistent hum, cars passing, people moving around in the other room, music playing somewhere. Even if there was nothing, there was always something. It wasn't like that in the hills. There were insects, birds, and rodents. But there were no people. Nobody had any reason to come out there. That's why Diego bought the land. He told Elena that he wanted his own personal paradise, a tiny kingdom complete with a coastline, a thriving economy, and a palace. Now his queen was sitting in her car waiting for their gates to open, and there was a sense of anticipation growing inside her. She was exhausted, ready to collapse and die in bed, but there was also that need to see him, hold him, and tell him everything she hadn't already told him about her day. Diego would listen, and he'd never once interrupt her. Then she'd do the same. It made life a little easier. She could wake up in the morning and face everything. He'd work just a little harder. Their time, those sweet few hours, was enough to give them the energy and optimism they needed to become better people. So when Elena pulled up, her dreams of showering and hiding under the covers for a century fell away. Diego was waiting for her out on the beach, where he'd gathered a pile of driftwood and brush. When she stepped out onto the sand, he lit a match, and the flames ignited. They flew up into the air, casting a quivering orange ring of light that danced across the circle of stones he'd laid out around them. Then he ran over, wrapped his arms around her waist, and he kissed her. It wasn't just a welcome home kiss. It embodied all of the excitement and youthful exuberance that was surging through him, giving her the burst of energy she needed. When he pulled back, he jumped up into the air and announced, "I'm coming back to the team." Thank God. I met with George today, and he said that there was nothing he can do. I'm an ocean hawk. I signed the contract. He plopped down on a lounge chair and patted the seat beside him. He's not happy, though, is he? No, he tried to convince me to leave. He thought of every reason he could. So, he doesn't want you there? Elena asked. He's stupid. He doesn't care whether we win or lose. He just wants me gone. What were his reasons? Did he say? Diego laughed. He tried to make it seem like it would be better for me. He said that the team was losing, and that I'd be better off playing for somebody that had a better lineup. When that didn't work, he tried to tell me that the other players weren't looking forward to seeing me. Bullshit. I've seen them talking to the press, Elena said. Exactly, Diego exclaimed. I called him on that one and he just shrugged it off like he wasn't even trying to play me. We both knew what he was doing. No shame. If it worked, he would have screwed the whole team over, Elena said. And I kept telling him that, but he wouldn't listen. It doesn't matter. Elena reached between them and took his hand. No, it doesn't, he said. He rubbed his thumb across the back of her hand, and she closed her eyes, letting the light from the flames dance across the back of her eyelids. At some point, she drifted off. When she woke up, he was cradling her in his arms like a baby, carrying her across the sand to the house. Chapter 5. Tonight is the night, the announcer's voice echoed through the car. It's time for the Ocean Hawks to finally prove that their lineup is enough to match the best. I don't know, John. I think they've lost it. There's no way for Diego to come back from an injury like that. Maybe not, but I have seen players make a comeback, and I honestly have faith in the man. Elena reached down to turn off the radio, careful to keep the wheel steady as she did. In less than 4 hours, the man that she loved would be the center of attention for millions of people across the country, and she was expected to be there. She called Donovan early that afternoon, when he usually climbed out of his cannabis-induced coma to join the rest of the world. His voice came on the line, sobbing, saying that he was no longer in business. Don't leave a message. She did anyway. She left six voicemails and 6 texts. She knew how many there were because each one represented a specific amount of time. Every 15 minutes, another message, no reply. After an hour and a half, and she was too nervous to keep going. She had work to do, but she also needed something to wear. She wasn't the fashion type. She loathed everything to do with the team's socialite groupies, but there were requirements in her world. A football player's wife couldn't just show up wearing off-brand items. There were no hoodies and sweatpants. The game was formal wear, and the media was going to be watching her. There would be cameras everywhere, and Diego was already under scrutiny. If things went badly for him that evening, they would be living under a lens, harassed every time they left the house. They'd done their best to avoid that, but the only way they could continue to do so was by maintaining appearances. That meant labels, stylists, nails, hair, everything, not just a good game. He could work his body to its limits and play like the predator he was, but if she didn't put in the effort, it wouldn't matter. The media would always be looking for some flaw to expose, because journalists hated them. It didn't help that Elena tried to stab a woman with a stiletto, or that it used to be her job to field off their questions. She could smell it all day, listening to the radio, taking quick glimpses of what was going on online. There was a heady air of pessimism, both unsettling and hateful. So when Elena got Donovan's message saying that he didn't know why she was calling, she wanted to run out and shoot him in the face. She called him right away and he ignored the call. The next time she called, he told her he'd block her number if she tried doing it again. There was nothing she could do. So she stopped calling. Now she was headed home, ready to throw in the towel and sift through her closet. There were things that she could wear, but now she was angry. No matter how dramatic or ridiculous he was still her friend. He'd given up, and she didn't like seeing that, so she took a risk. She sent him a message saying that she was headed to Fergie's to buy a dress. Halfway home, he called. When she answered, there was the sound of somebody hacking up in the background. Then his voice came on. "You're a Donovan girl. How could you?" he shrieked. "How could you? You told me that you weren't working. You're at Fergie's right now, aren't you? Picking out one of those ancient stained prom dresses. Don't you dare. No, don't you dare do that to me. I'm almost there. I'm coming. Don't you put that nasty, sweat-stained cloth on your body. You understand me? Don't do it." There was a pause, and then another muffled cough. The line beeped, and he hung up. Elena was starting to regret calling. If he showed up at Fergie's, Katie would probably kick him out. Chelsea would get in trouble for having him there. She could lose her job. Elena would have to meet him at the front of the shop and hope that he didn't storm the place. He'd probably make a scene. It was obvious that he'd been smoking weed. He was probably driving high, twisting through traffic. If he didn't crash his car, he'd be furious with her. There was nothing she could do, though. She was the reason that he was coming down there, and there was no way that she was going to be able to stop him from coming. She dialed Chelsea's number and realized halfway through the second ring that there was no way she could answer. She was probably working, so she took a chance and typed in the name of the store to get the number. She was driving 60 miles down a busy freeway, struggling to keep the wheel straight until she finally found it. "Fergie's, this is Chelsea." "Listen, Donovan is on his way down there right now." "Yes, it's half off on every red tag," she chimed, using best customer service voice. "Katie's there right now, isn't she? Tell me she's not." "In another 5 minutes or so." "Is that when she gets off?" Elena asked. "Sure is," she responded. "Okay, so we have time. Text me when he comes." "I'll do that. You have a great day." She hung up the phone. Elena tried calling Donovan again, but all she got was a message saying, "Driving. Don't wear those rags." His house wasn't very far from 6th Avenue, just a few miles, and Elena was on the other side of town. There was a huge chance that he'd arrive before Katie got off, and when he did, Elena wouldn't be there. She waited for the text to come, or a catastrophic phone call with a pregnant Chelsea crying about what she was going to do. She probably wouldn't call at all. She'd go off and give her son up. Then she'd go back to dancing. Elena watched all of those possibilities, each one a little worse. Chances were, Katie would be gone, but she still felt like she'd failed her friend somehow. This was unnecessary trouble, all for the sake of something she considered shallow and naive. Fashion, of all things. She was causing a scene over fashion. She should have just gone home and found something sensible to wear. Now she was pulling off the freeway, straight into a disaster. Chelsea still hadn't said anything, which meant that she couldn't text because she was too busy, or that Donovan wasn't there. She was probably too busy, considering the crowd that congregated there at night. 6th was the party sector, where kids and washouts would come to get cheap drugs and booze. There would be prostitutes and clubgoers sifting through the racks, stuffing everything they could into oversized bags. It was Chelsea's job to help all of them, if she still had a job. There was no way that Donovan would have taken this long to get to the store. He was only a few minutes away. But his car wasn't parked in the lot behind the building. When Elena walked inside, Chelsea was ringing up a pair of women. She handed them their receipt and strode over. "He ain't here." "He didn't show up at all?" "No, he hasn't called me or anything." "Last I spoke with him, he was driving," Elena said. "That doesn't make any sense." "I know. Is Katie gone?" "There's nobody here," Chelsea said. "It's been quiet this whole time. I've just been folding clothes." "Thank God!" Elena braced herself against the counter. "I'm so sorry about this. I kept thinking that he'd come and make a scene." "Katie's not going to care. She's a fiery girl, but she calms down quick." "But she said that he couldn't come here. Are you sure?" Elena asked. "Oh, yeah." Chelsea brushed her hand as if she were pushing all of Elena's worries aside. "How do you like it here?" she asked. "I love it. That girl from the candle place came in yesterday. Come here." She brought Elena to the back wall where the wax sculptures were lined up on the shelves of an old mahogany bookcase. It was in between the door to the back room and the utility room. On top was a kerosene lamp holding down a sign that said, "Cora's Candle Creations." "That's wonderful. Katie bought all of these?" "She said Cora could display them. You like it?" "I do." Elena gave her a warm smile. "What happened at the stadium? Did you just walk out?" "I spoke with Dante in accounting. He's forgetting to take me off payroll for my last few weeks to give me a boost." "Won't you get found out?" "No, God, no. Nobody ever watches the books. He's the only one, and he's always been generous with me." Chelsea dropped short and ran as fast she could in the other direction. "You!" Donovan came storming down the aisle, pointing a finger at Elena. "Did Katie give you that thing to wear?" "My work clothes?" "Oh." He stopped and sniffed the air. "What is that?" Lavender, vanilla, and patchouli. Chelsea was behind the front counter folding clothes. What? He twisted his face. It's the candles, Donovan, Elena said. Why would you come here? I told you I was coming here so you'd help me. You're giving up, Chelsea called out. She's doing you a favor. What else can I do? House of Donovan is gone. The girls left me. I don't have anywhere to do hair. Wait. Chelsea rushed over and opened the supply closet. Come here. No, what is that place? Just come here. She grabbed Donovan's hand and pulled him inside. Look. No, absolutely not. I would have to scrub it for a year. It should be torn out and replaced. And the smell. I need clean, beautiful. Elena walked in to see what was happening. Chelsea was rinsing out an old rectangular sink with paint splattered across the surface. There was a fold-up chair sitting nearby where Donovan was sitting, staring at the ground. It won't work, he said. You have a chair. Chelsea turned back, holding a metal scrubbing brush. And you have clothes and makeup, Elena added. You're Donovan. It doesn't matter where you work or what supplies you have. You're a genius. He sat up straight. It won't be the same. Of course it will, Chelsea said. You work on the go all the time. But there's no money in it. The Ocean Hawks fired me. Nobody calls me for the red carpet. I drove up to Angel City. They laughed me out of the building. Me. Elena shook her head in dismay and watched as Chelsea knelt down to take his hands. He looked away. Hey, look at me. He turned his head in the other direction. Donovan, come on. It'll never be the same. Send her out there looking like a goddess, and she will tell the world who did it. I will, Elena said. I promise. And she'll make those Nico witches look like painted old ladies. For you. He stood up and turned back to the sink. Get my chair. He handed Chelsea his keys. Elena rang up customers while he barked orders. Chelsea swept, mopped, and scrubbed the supply room. They dragged out old mop buckets, paint cans, and broken pieces of furniture while he surveyed the room with disgust. When it was cleared out, they pulled his clothes rack inside and set up his chair. Elena was ringing up a pair of skinny jeans for a sour-faced old hooker when she saw Katie walking towards the entrance. Chelsea, she called out. What? She came into the lobby. Katie, she mouthed so the woman couldn't hear. Her eyes went wide and she disappeared into the utility room. She should be honored, Donovan said. I don't care. Let me talk to her. He darted out just in time to see Katie gawking at the entrance. What are you doing? Just come see, Chelsea yelled out. See what? She turned to Elena. I told you not to let him come here. Elena shrugged. Donovan folded his arms across his chest. They called me. She needs help. You called him here? Will you just stop and take a look? Chelsea called out from the utility room. Katie sighed. What did you do to my store, you rancid? Finish that sentence, he yelled. Finish it. Katie took a breath and clenched her fists, but she allowed Chelsea to show her the room, how clean it was, and what he was planning on doing. The whole time, she kept looking at the clothes rack, like a child trying to decide whether or not they could get away with stealing a piece of candy. The gesture was not lost on Donovan, who stood by his creations, guarding them. Elena wasn't sure what was going to happen, and she was starting to get impatient. She needed to be at the stadium in less than an hour and a half. Donovan was going to want to do her hair, so things needed to speed up. Donovan? She stepped inside, ignoring Katie's icy stare. Nobody is buying your dresses, and she clearly wants you to sell them here. Katie looked away. Why don't you make a compromise? He pursed his lips. I deserve an apology for the way I've been treated. Katie's sigh was like a foghorn. I'm sorry. I'll think about it. Move. He waved his hands to buzz everyone out of the room so he could focus on Elena. He shut the door and the girls went back to work, while he brushed out her hair, humming along as he did. "You've been conditioning," he said. "I'm concerned, and I'm not going to waste my time pretending like nothing is wrong." "Oh, stop." He took out a spray bottle and unscrewed the cap so he could fill it. "Do you remember my first night with Diego?" He shrugged and turned away. "It's not important." "You made me look in the mirror, remember? You said that we all think we know ourselves until we look at our reflection. Then we'll surprise ourselves." "Stop. We'll see all the flaws, the stray hairs, the fat rolls, and we'll want to work harder. Isn't that your philosophy? Look in the mirror and learn to become a better person." "I can leave." He turned away and lifted his hand to brush something away from his eye. "But you won't, because you know that I'm right, and that the man that gave me the confidence to survive in this sewer they call a city is deteriorating. You sold your house, you lost your girls, and now you're doing nothing but sitting in your tiny apartment, smoking weed. How many bowls have you had today?" "That's my business," he squeaked, clearly sobbing now. "Do my hair. Give me an amazing gown, and I will do everything I can to show the world what you can do." "Thank you." His voice was low, devoid of the flair he exhibited before, but it wasn't depression. It was intimacy, the kind achieved when a friend gives another friend a true life-changing revelation. When he turned back to her, he was completely renewed, and there was no sign of the tears she saw before. Chapter 6. There was a special box overlooking the stadium, near the top where the women would congregate and pretend to eat while they kept a close eye on the team's performance. Elena always sat down in the corner and ignored their catty stares. There was a vicious competitive spirit between them, and she wasn't about to get involved in their petty politics. The women streamed in, like peacocks, all of them wearing Nico's signature red and black designs. There were brunettes in red sequin slit dresses and blondes in ruffled evening gowns. There was little variety, and each and every one of them cast their glances in her direction. They knew that she wasn't seeing Nico. She stood out, and Elena wasn't sure she liked that. She could sense the tension, noses in the air, lips curled over teeth, and quiet laughter. Two blondes took seats beside her, and they were whispering while they covered their mouths. The one closest to her cleared her throat. "That is just the cutest dress. Where did you get it?" Elena straightened her lavender bodice with a smile. "Donovan." "Oh." She turned back to the game. They all knew who he was. Ladies in Ocean Beach made a point in knowing that kind of thing. The hatred was palpable, but Elena knew better than anyone else that that was a good sign. They'd feign disgust and call Donovan later. Nico's lack of originality and his reputation for arrogance would be enough. Elena was so focused on their reaction, a cardinal sin, that she didn't notice that they were starting until the announcer's voice came on and a pair of spotlights scanned the crowd. There was the roar of applause, the state song, and the national anthem, another chance for the women to look at her. She didn't mind. The gown was beautiful, covered in rhinestones with a black ribbon belt that brought the necessary contrast needed to catch their eyes. She didn't get goosebumps until they started the first play. She leaned forward, waiting to see Diego run out and take his place on field. She counted each player until they got to his position. He wasn't there. Then she saw him on the sidelines. He threw his helmet down and walked into the locker room. She couldn't get to him, and now the girls were laughing. The whispers were getting harsher, their voices louder. They weren't even trying to hide their scrutiny. She stood up with her head held high and walked out with her hips swinging. She wasn't sure where she was going to go, but she knew that she couldn't be in that room, so she found a place to sit outside in the courtyard and pulled out her phone. "What is happening?" she texted him. "I'm dealing with it." "Is he going to play you?" she texted back. There was a period of silence while she watched people streaming past. She felt like a scorned bride, sitting in a gown on a concrete bench while she stared down at her phone. She wasn't sure what was going on inside. She wanted to go back in and watch the game, but she didn't want to humiliate herself. It wouldn't have mattered usually, but she wasn't just representing Diego. She was representing Donovan. What she did would reflect on him. If she walked back into that box wearing his gown, it would be like admitting the defeat. They would say, "Oh, here she comes again." That wasn't the kind of message Elena wanted to put out there. She'd already humiliated herself. But as the minutes passed and turned into an hour, Elena was starting to get impatient. Had she been allowed to, she would have stormed the locker room. That was strictly forbidden, though. Only players and team personnel were allowed, no matter how hard the women tried to get in. Still, if she didn't do something, this could kill Diego's career. She decided to go around the back of the building and sneak into the elevator. There she could access the top floor where George, the team owner, had his office. She posted up in a chair across from Francine's desk and pulled up a video feed of the game on her phone. Every time a new play started, she watched the field. When he didn't come out, her anger level rose. George was purposely sabotaging the team for his own personal vendetta. Finally, she decided to text Diego again. "I'm waiting outside the office. Are you playing? Meet me." "Okay." His response was quick and decisive. It meant that George wasn't playing him. Diego was ready for a confrontation, and they were going to have to fight. She messaged him back asking, "Where is he?" "Box," he responded. Nobody, not even George's wife, whose sole existence was to placate PR, was allowed in George's box. He was hiding. He wouldn't make it very far, though. There was always a press conference after the game. He held it in his office with a core group of reporters, which he said would allow them to have a more intimate gathering. It made them feel like they were getting into his head. It was a nice trick, one that Elena admired when she worked as the team's head of PR. The elevator door dinged behind her, and she turned to see Diego walking out, still wearing his uniform. His face was red, and there was sweat dripping down his forehead. He sat down in a chair beside her and leaned forward with his elbows resting on his knees. "Come here." Elena stood up and offered her hand to him. He took it and stood up without saying a word. She led him around Francine's desk and sat down on the floor. "What are you doing?" "Trust me." She motioned for him to sit down beside her. "We can't see him walk in." "And he can't see us," she said. He smiled. "Genius." "Te quiero." He took her hand. She rested her head on his shoulder and listened to the sound of his breath while they listened for the elevator to open. She could tell by the way his heart was pounding and his breath racing that he was ready to lose control, but for now he was subdued. She had that effect on him. When the elevator door opened, they sat listening while the crowd walked in. Feet squeaked against the tile, and a soft hum of voices steadily made their way to their right, towards George's office. Diego started to rise up to his feet. Elena's hand shot up, and she grabbed him by the wrist with a finger pressed to her lips. "Wait," she mouthed. He gave her a knowing smile and sat back down. The procession took more than 5 minutes. George was allowing a larger group of reporters into his office than he usually did. There was a moment of quiet, interrupted by the sound of 2 pairs of heels clicking against the tile. "I need you in there now." Francine's voice was unnaturally high. "Why?" That was the new director of PR, Bobby. She was Chelsea's replacement, and she had no experience. "You're the front line here," Francine said. "Stand next to him and nod while he's talking. It makes them more confident in what he's saying." Maybe they'd have more confidence if... "Go, now." "Fine, I'm going." When they heard the sound of George's door closing behind them, Diego stood up. "Bobby doesn't like it either." "Nobody does." Elena took his hand and he helped her stand up. "But don't go in yet. Give it a second." "Why?" "We need to wait." "Why?" he asked again. "Trust me." She met his eyes and he nodded, but he was tapping his foot, pacing in front of the desk and eyeing the door. He wanted to rush inside and stop the whole thing. "I want to go in," he said. "Don't, Diego." She tried to grab his wrist to stop him, but he made straight for the door. It opened before he could step inside. A young man wearing geek glasses and a tailored suit started to walk out. He stopped when he saw Diego, and a smile curved across his face. "Diego, my name is Cameron Flores, and I would love to sit down with you for an—" "Diego," a deep female voice called out. "Reina Gutierrez here. What do you have to say about being benched?" Diego smiled, and Elena came up beside him. "I'll be more than willing to answer all your questions out in the lobby where we can have a real interview." "Did he—" Francine shoved past a cluster of cameramen. "Oh, you mother." George rested a hand on her shoulder. "It would be better to spend some time and—" "We've had our time to think this through," Elena said, "and now we're going to the press. If you'd all like to follow me down into the lobby, we'll take your questions there." Francine's mouth fell open. Elena gave her a smug smile and took Diego's hand so she could lead him down the stairs. George's voice echoed down. "Don't do this, Diego." He stopped halfway towards the landing. "You bastard." "He screwed it all up. You're betraying your team." Francine's shrill voice bounced off the walls. "We'll find a way," Francine screamed. "Shut up," George said. They couldn't hear her answer. Elena and Diego were too far down the stairs at that point, and there was no sign of footsteps following them down. When they got to the first floor, Diego took Elena's hand and turned to her. "I'm worried," he said. "What are you worried for?" "This isn't going to look good. The other teams will know that I did this. George might find a way to break my contract. I might not play again. They'll find a way to bench you for the rest of your contract if you don't do something to stop them. How long is it supposed to last?" 4 more years, he turned away. "You might as well just not show up." "But what if the other owners see this?" "It's a competition," Elena said. "Make sure they know that you want to play and that you're one of the best in the league, because you are." "All right." He pushed through the door, and the open air flew out at them. The journalists were all waiting, just a few feet away, their mics at the ready. Behind them, a frenzied Francine was holding her cell phone out to record everything he said. Elena had never seen Diego scared before. She didn't think it was possible. She'd seen him upset, angry, drunk, but she'd never seen him like this, with his shoulders scrunched tight, taking careful, calculated footsteps forward. He stopped a few feet away and stood rigid against the flurry of questions flying at him like arrows on a battlefield. He turned back to her, and her heart jumped. He needed her help. "All right." She stepped in front of him. "We're going to say a few words. Then we're going to take questions. Unless you want to hear no comment, you will refrain from interrupting him. Are we understood?" Mouths shut across the room, and a hand rested on her shoulder. She stepped back so he could talk. "Thank you," he said, and cleared his throat, a quiet, stunted sound. "I have consistently proven my performance on the field. My statistics are some of the best in the team's history, but I have been met with nothing but suspicion, discrimination, and disdain. I am not being benched because of my performance or my injury. I am being benched because of a personal vendetta. George hates me. He always has. Just a few days ago, he took me into his office and tried to convince me to back out of my contract. I am not giving up. I'm one of the best in the league, and I want to play. I'll win for whoever gives me a uniform." With that last statement, he looked directly into Francine's camera. This was more than an assault on their reputation. He was ready to betray the Seahawks if they didn't play him. This was an ultimatum. Chapter 7. When Diego finished his speech, the room went quiet. Nobody said a thing. It was like thunder before the lightning. "Are you saying that you're willing to sign with another team?" Francine shrieked. Diego, are you a free agent? Those two words seemed to echo all around them. They were met by 1,000 questions all at once. Are you being scouted by another team? Are you willing to move to Angel City? Have you spoken to Houston? Is it true that you had an affair with George's son, Chance? Your career is over, Francine shrieked. There was no security, nothing to stop a rabid journalist form approaching him. They were moving closer, shouting questions as they did. He stepped back and shielded Elena, but there was still a space behind them. He took another step back, and she grabbed his hand to pull him out into the stairwell. They had no direct exit, and as soon as they got inside, 3 journalists followed after them. A woman grabbed the back of Elena's dress, just as they were about to reach the 2nd floor. Diego! He pulled the material away, and it ripped under the force of the woman's bright red acrylics. That's assault. Oh, you want to see assault? Elena lifted her leg to pull off her stiletto, and the woman nearly fell backwards into a crowd of people swarming to get up the stairs. Diego pulled her out into the hall before they could overtake them. And then they were running, past the elevator, towards the 2nd stairwell on the other side of the building. It was empty when they got inside, and Diego lifted Elena off the ground. He jumped down the last flight of stairs and darted into the lot. He was parked in back. They swung around the corner, and his car came into view. When they jumped inside, there was a crowd blocking the exit, a common paparazzi technique to make sure they could get close. Diego threw the car into reverse, swung out of their space, and revved the engine. He stuck his head out. You people better get out of the way. He pounded the accelerator, and the crowd started to dissolve. Most headed for the curb. Others stayed close, hoping to get a quick shot, but there was one brave Botox queen left standing in the middle of the exit. What is that? Elena asked. It's a shoe. She gasped. It was a shoe, a hot pink stiletto, just like the one that Elena hit that very same woman with. Diego, that's Joy Bell. You need to brake. He clenched his jaw and kept his eyes straight. Diego. Another few yards, and the woman would be splattered all over their windshield. Diego reached over to block her chest with his arm and sped up, testing the engine to its limits. Joy Bell waited until the last second to jump aside with a shriek. When Diego put his arm down, Elena's heart was pounding. She didn't know why it happened or what spurred it on, but she couldn't help but laugh. Then Diego joined in, and they were both giggling and smiling. Woo! Elena threw her fist out the window and let it fall back. Diego's lips caught hers, and a shock rolled through. He propelled them through the intersection and reached out and turned on the radio, blasting a funky dance beat while he let his head bob. He had this way of jutting out his lower lip that made her want to reach out and bite it, shove her tongue through his mouth, and feel his fingers gripping her back. And when he hummed along with the music, his voice became a force that vibrated deep in her gut, sending it dancing to the rhythm. The female vocalist sang like she'd been holding her breath, and this was the first sound she'd been allowed to make in years. She was in prison, and now she was breaking free, letting the rhythm of the moment travel with them as fast as their sports car could go. Diego had a way of handling himself on the road. It was biochemical alchemy. He would hit the gas just before they reached a turn, emitting a surge of adrenaline. Then, when they were about to fly over the sea cliff, he'd ease onto the brake enough to get them around the corner alive. There was no relief, just the thrill, and he kept going on like that as his hand drifted up Elena's thigh. He stopped just before he reached the place where her legs met. That was when she saw the security gate, black, wrought iron bars with the moon hanging above them. Every detail, from the craters to the peaks, were visible in the clear midnight sky. He stopped at the checkpoint and swept his finger up between her legs, digging them in as he did. When he pulled his hand away to type in the gate code, she gripped the door handle. Her body was pulsing, grasping at air, and there was a thirst, starvation really, rising up at the back of her throat. Her mouth was watering, and he was squeezing her knee again. She rested her hand on his and turned to him. He glanced over, and a glint of moonlight caught in his eyes. I feel good. He stopped in front of the house. I feel fantastic. I can make you feel better, she said. Yeah? He opened his door and stepped out. She was ready to follow him when he ran around the front of the car to pull her out. He wasn't even going to let her walk. He needed her faster than her feet could carry them into the bedroom. He could hardly wait to get her inside. When he had her in his arms, he dove down with a tender look and pressed his lips to hers. She kept her eyes open so she could see the moon behind him, illuminating his smooth head and his square jaw. The way his shoulders seemed to fold in around her when he bent down. She reached up to let her finger run down the contour of his biceps, towards his elbow. He was still wearing his jersey, and the sleeves pulled up his arms, revealing his mocha skin. That look, the black war paint on his cheekbones, and the padding on his shoulders, the way his pants hugged his hips. She wanted to see what it would be like to watch him strip down. When he opened the door, she expected him to walk her upstairs, thinking that he'd lay her down on the bed, but he walked past the staircase, through the kitchen, and opened up the doors leading to the veranda. He set her down on the cushion, and she rolled over, so she could lay on her side and prop her head up in her hand. He laid down beside her, so that they were facing one another, and traced a single finger down her side. She sucked in a sharp burst of air and rolled over onto her back. He responded with a snarl and lowered himself on top of her with one hand resting on the cushion to keep from crushing her with the full force of his weight. He let his lips sweep across her own, sending a static burst streaming along with them. Then the tip of his tongue peeked through, and their breath was melding, hot and tempestuous, like a mild flame that warmed her cheeks and tickled her nose. His tongue was a suggestive delight, moving in and out with the tip stroking her palate. It rested on the back of her front teeth, and he clamped down on her lip with a fiery snarl. It was like being injected with liquid lightning, and it brought a series of chills rising up, over her arms and down her neck. His hand crept up underneath her shirt. His skin was warm, more than warm. It was hot, so much so that as his hand moved up her stomach, it left a column of fire that ignited her senses and brought with it a sense of raw, delirious excitement. It burned through her self-control. That was gone, and she was just living through it, trying to hold her legs together. His knee was pressing up in between them, and her body was throbbing. She felt his body press against the cushion and his hands wrap around her waist, pulling her closer, but she didn't realize what was happening until his lips touched hers, and she opened her eyes to see him smiling. "You're so sexy." He kissed her again. She lifted her head so she could rest it on his shoulder. For now, they were there, together, and no matter what would happen, she knew. Whether he left the team or not, no matter where they went, she would have him. She wasn't scared. She was rejoicing. Chapter 8. The sound of the phone ringing blasted through the air. Elena turned away from the monitor and took a breath before she answered. It was a calming tactic she'd been using to help her deal with her clients. "Strauss Marketing, this is—" "Miss Anal," Lauren cut in. "What?" "Alcohol. Meet me in the lobby." She hung up. As much as they bickered, Elena had come to like Lauren. Most of the people she'd met in Ocean Beach were fake. They didn't say what they thought, and they didn't mean what they said. Lauren didn't care. She was her vulgar self regardless. It didn't matter how people reacted or what they did. She was a spectator, laughing at the world from her drunken pedestal. And more often than not, she was smarter than the rest. It was a refreshing paradigm, one that Elena enjoyed immensely. When Elena walked out of her office, Fernanda was standing with her hands crossed, less than 2 feet from her door. She swung around without a word and strode down the hall towards the elevator. She was heaven embodied. The world moved to the rhythm of her swinging hips and her dark hair, so straight it must have fallen from heaven. Lauren came up beside Elena before they made it in the elevator. She didn't want you to be prepared, so she told me to lie. Fernanda cleared her throat and stepped inside. They followed her in and didn't say a word until the doors opened up to the mahogany palace that housed her office. "How are you liking your clientele?" Fernanda asked, as she motioned for them to sit down in the seating area in the lobby. "They're predictable," Elena said, taking her seat. "I'm learning to placate them." Fernanda gave her a quick nod of approval. "Good. And what about Henrika? Is she happy?" "She's allowed me to continue working on the account." "You know what you're doing." Fernanda leaned forward and picked up a tablet off the table in the center. The screen lit up, and she scrolled through a form. "We've sat down with 3 of your clients, unnamed, of course, to ask them about their level of satisfaction. Your overall score excels that of your predecessor." She set the tablet in her lap and looked up. Elena felt like a child in the principal's office. She couldn't hold up to this woman's unnatural green eyes. "Do I intimidate you?" Lauren scoffed midway through lighting a cigarette. "You intimidate everyone." "Except for Lauren," Elena said. "Do you know why?" Fernanda asked, still staring. She took a breath and closed her eyes, which did nothing to ease the pressure. "Money and power." "That's a load of shit," Lauren said. "It is," Fernanda agreed. "Look around you. Go ahead." She was telling Elena to open her eyes, which she did. There was thousands of dollars worth of furniture, wooden wall panels with what she knew to be gold trimming, marble columns, and an arched bridge that led across a pond into Fernanda's office. "It's a show, dipshit." Lauren blew out a cloud of smoke. "Put that out," Fernanda said. Lauren sighed and flicked it into the pond. Fernanda's head moved so fast in her direction, it was like she was forcing Lauren to pull it out of the water with her mind. "Everyone starts at the bottom," she went on. "Some of us begin with more money and more influence than others, but what matters is our skills and the aura we give off to the rest of the world." "You're saying that I should be assertive?" Elena reaffirmed. "You want me to dress nice and exude authority?" "No, what I'm saying is that you already do those things. You're just not aware that you're doing it. You think you're here by accident? You just stumbled into Big One, then fell into my office? You have something." "You do." Lauren took her seat, holding a drenched cigarette butt. Fernanda smiled. "You do. And that is why you're going to be taking over the entire department after Lauren's inevitable departure." "She says inevitable because she hates me," Lauren said. "I gave my notice." Elena lifted her hand to cover her smile. "No, it's okay. Be yourself. I like you. I want you to know that you're appreciated here." "She's anal too." "It's your courage." Fernanda folded her hands in her lap and leaned closer. "Nobody else. Nobody would say the kinds of things you've said. You stood in the middle of the stadium lobby, side by side with Diego, and you told them to go fuck themselves. It was beautiful." She leaned back. "And that is something Lauren can't do." Fernanda turned her way. "You won't even look at Henriqua." "Can you blame me?" Lauren asked. She told Margot she needed to go back on her antipsychotics. "She was showing signs of withdrawals," Lauren countered. "It doesn't matter. Elena knows how to handle the clients, and they actually like her. You are leaving. That's where you stand. You're in this room because I need you to go with her this afternoon, and I need you humble." "Humble?" "We're going to see Henrika," Elena said. "You need to be humble." "Shit, I'm smoking." "No, you are not," Fernanda said. "Fine." She stashed her cigarette back in her pack. "Can I go get drunk now?" "Go wait near the elevator. Elena will be there shortly." She waved her hand, and Lauren stood up to walk back down the hall. It was like she had a remote control that could make people do whatever she wanted without a word. When Lauren was gone, she sat back and crossed her legs. The way she was looking at Elena was unsettling. She saw everything, from the timid look in Elena's eyes to the way she folded her arms and made fists with her hands. "Why are you here? I mean, I know that this is where you landed and that's about it. But what made you get into this business? You hate the corporate world and everything to do with the social elite." Elena responded without hesitation. "I want to help people become independent. In the Midwest, everyone works for a corporation. It's farming, power plants, retail. That's the culture. They never go out on their own and build their own lives, and it's terrible." "You want to empower small businesses?" Fernanda reaffirmed. "People." She nodded, as if she were a psychic that had just taken a reading. "Go. You have 2 hours before Henrika gets here. Elena, you're going to have to come up with more than just mobile applications. You know she's not easily pleased." She stood up to lead her to the elevator where Lauren was waiting, holding her next cigarette. "I will do some research and see what I can come up with." "Maybe Lauren can help," Fernanda said before she walked back to her office. "Let's go. I'm almost sober enough to drive." They took the elevator to the ground floor and settled for a cocktail bar a few blocks away from the stadium, where they could sit in a private booth and share a platter of mozzarella sticks. Lauren held one up and carefully poured a line of marinara on top. "You're eating," Elena remarked. "I don't want to get too drunk tonight." "Why's that?" she asked. "My girlfriend and I are renting a beach house for the evening. It's our anniversary." "Really?" "Mm-hmm," she said. 8 years. It's not very often you hear of same-sex couples staying together that long. Couples in general, honestly. She took a bite and washed it down with a sip of beer. "We're different. We were lovers in high school. When we came out, our parents both threw us onto the streets and we made our own way. We work as a team." "You bonded." "That's how you do it," she said. "You integrate your lives. If you can't do that, there's no point." "So what does she do?" Elena asked. "She's an event planner," Lauren said. "That's how I got my job at the company. We started out doing rock shows in small nightclubs and selling weed to the customers while we sold tickets." "How did that lead to Strauss Marketing?" "One of our best clients owned the convention center. He wanted us to work with Fernanda and get people in for events and shit. It worked out." "Client?" Elena bit the tip of a mozzarella stick. "Smokes every single second he's awake, this guy. It's disgusting. He's got this belly popping out of his shirt." Elena's face went sour. "Don't talk like that before we meet the javelina." "Boar?" "What's the difference?" Elena asked. "Javelinas have smaller snouts, and they're not really pigs, more like rats. This woman is all Miss Piggy. Did she take you to her buffet?" "Don't. In fact," Elena pushed the platter away, "I should probably save my appetite. For slimy mussels and—" Elena rose an eyebrow. "Sorry." Lauren threw the rest of her beer back and slammed the bottle down. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out 100. "Come on. If we're late, that woman will roast us on a spit and serve us with fish sauce." Elena stood up and followed her out to the car. They were supposed to be discussing viable options for mobile advertising. Elena picked out a handful of apps after researching what games were the most popular and the demographics that downloaded them. She went through the lists and their benefits in her head while they rode up the elevator. What game would an uptight future alcoholic play more, Farmburg or Slot City? Neither. Beach chicks. What? Why beach chicks? Pent-up frustration. They're pissy and they need some sort of release. Sex, of course, because it's the most obvious. But they can't get satisfaction from the app. They can't jack off because they're playing it at work. And if they're uptight enough to be driven to drink, they're not going to get it when they get home, so they'll turn to liquor. Don't you feel bad doing this to people? Luring them into drinking? Lauren asked. No, and that's not because I drink. She held up a hand when she saw Elena's reaction. Alcohol is as old as time, and the temptation has always been there. You're either a drinker and you have the glutton in you or you don't. I don't know. It's proven, she said. It's a disease, and some people are more predisposed to it than others. The door opened before Elena could say anything else, and they were both confronted with what looked like a conveyor belt wrapped around a caramel statue, tied off with a red ribbon. What? Henrika turned to face them. Let's go. She shoved them into the elevator. What are you wearing? Lauren blurted out halfway down to the lobby. I don't like it either, Henrika admitted. I'm told it's in style. I'll probably have it burned after tonight. Burned? Lauren lit a cigarette. Henrika reached over and grabbed one out of her pack. Well, I could donate it to charity. She grabbed Lauren's lighter. But what's the point? She shoved it down the front of her dress. Nobody's going to want to wear this. Why are you wearing it? Elena asked. Because I have a date right after this, and I don't want to have to go home and change. You don't want your husband to see. Lauren held her hand out. No, I don't. The door opened, and Henrika pushed past her. He asks too many questions, you know. Is he staff? How old is he? She went on about the specifics of her marriage while they watched her enjoy a platter of shrimp cocktail in the limo. It was depressing, knowing that she had nobody in her life that she could connect with and come home to cuddle with. Her husband didn't want to hear about her day. He didn't even want to talk to her unless he was prying into her life. They weren't in love, and judging by the way she spoke about him, they never were. She called it kitty litter, her variation of puppy love. She didn't stop when they reached the restaurant. When they took their seats, she forced them to take shots of tequila to wet their palates and slammed her glass down. There's no point in love. It holds you back. I think it's a motivator, Elena said. And it's fun, Lauren added. Bull. She reached out to grab a breadstick from the center of the table. Crumbs flew out of her mouth when she took a bite. You don't understand. The only reason people fall in love is so they can have kids and force somebody to take care of them when they get old. I'm barren, and I have enough money to force anyone to do anything I want. Pfft, Lauren laughed. What is she doing here? Henrika asked. She'd been refusing to address Lauren since for the majority of the conversation. I don't know. Fernanda made me. You have something I want, that's what it is. She does nothing without a reason. Henrika took another bite of her breadstick. You're the event girl. I'm the... shit. What? Elena asked. It's food for the world. What did you just say? Elena ruffled her brow. That's what I want to know, Henrika said. That sounds like something I want nothing to do with. Elena grabbed a breadstick, ignoring Henrika's territorial scowl. It's a charity event. I knew it. Elena broke the stick in half. That is all you. Why would I go to a charity event? Henrika asked. The red carpet, Lauren said. Ooh. Henrika smiled. Of course. Is this a big event? What is it? It's for the Ocean Hawks, Lauren told her. They do token donation drives for publicity. It's all Botox and silicone, Elena added. They're usually money laundering schemes. At the last one I went to, they made some kid up to look like he had Down syndrome so he could accept a big check in front of everyone. That sounds like something I should get in on. They have a red carpet? Do they have gift bags? I haven't seen any, Elena said. Have you, Lauren? No, and the only sponsors they have are fashion magazines. They rely on donations. That's terrible. Henrika shoved the rest of the breadstick in her mouth and took a sip of her beer. I'd give everyone free shooters, do some networking. There's a reason your boss is number one. She did do this, didn't she? Elena announced and looked to Lauren, who nodded. Yeah, this is all her fault. Well, if you don't want me to go, Henrika shrugged. I could bring my money somewhere else. Jesus! Elena grabbed Lauren's beer, tipped it, and slammed it down. I am not going to the event, but I will get you away from that demented lunatic Nico if you promise to tell everyone who you're wearing. How did you know Nico made me this dress? Henrika asked. He only does red and black. We'll get you ready. Henriqua had them leave before they ordered food. The breadsticks were just a preliminary for the meal with her date, a buff blonde that was waiting in the lobby when they walked past. Lauren couldn't stop laughing when they saw him. She was convinced that he was a gigolo because of his tailored eyebrows. Elena let it go on, anything to avoid having to talk about the event. Chapter 9. Diego kept the drapes open in the bedroom. He said that it was because he wanted to give the dolphins a show, but really, Elena knew that it was because they could watch the sun fall into the ocean. On those rare nights when she came home to him laying in bed with the remote in his hand, she'd cuddle up next to him and rest her head on his shoulder. She loved the time before sunset, when the day was over, and they were resting before they had to go to work in the morning. Everything was suspended. There was nothing to do, nobody to please, no appointments. She worked her entire day for this moment. Her phone vibrated when she was about to pull up to the gate in front of the house. She stopped, typed in the code, and pulled it out so she could read what it said. It was Diego. "I love you. I can't wait to see you." He sent her one or two of those messages every day. They'd come in at the perfect times when she needed that relief. Or they'd come at the worst times, but she wouldn't mind. She had them all saved in a special folder so she could come back to them when she was upset or when she needed motivation. She stored it with the rest and pulled up to the house where she found him laying in bed exactly where she knew he would be. She changed into a pair of comfortable jeans and a t-shirt. Then she plopped down beside him and rested her head on his shoulder. He smiled and turned off the TV. He wasn't really watching it anyway. He was staring at her, waiting. He reached one hand under the bed and casually pulled up a black velvet box. He rested it on his stomach, just a few inches away from her nose. "Did I say you could do that?" she asked. "You're not mad, are you? It's just a necklace." "How many diamonds are on it?" "None." He opened it up to show her the single amethyst pendant on a silver band. "Is that platinum or silver?" She took it out of the box. "Does it matter?" He took it from her and reached back to clasp it around her neck. She turned away so he couldn't see her smiling. "It's a lot." "But it's for you." He pecked her on the cheek. "And you're beautiful, and I love you." She laid back down on his shoulder. "I love you too." The sun was still hanging above the water, and he was there, stroking her cheek with his arm wrapped around her neck. "Tell me about your day," he said. "I went to lunch with an alcoholic lesbian who used to be a drug dealer." "Did you have fun?" "Yeah. We run the department together. Well, I run the department and she helps me. She's leaving." "Where?" "I didn't ask, but I'll miss her. Her name's Lauren and she's fun. She jokes around a lot. Fernanda is..." "She's what?" "She's strange. She plays chess with us. She wanted me to send one of our clients to the Food for the World Gala, but she didn't tell us that. She sent Lauren to lunch with the client because she knew that Lauren would be able to hook her up with it. We had no idea what was happening until the woman finally asked why Lauren was there." "That is strange. Why would she send you there without telling her what you wanted?" "I can't decide," Lauren said. "She likes me." "Maybe she wants you to figure things out. Learn how to network. That's a big part of your job, isn't it?" "Well, that's what I do, and I think you're probably right. She called me into her office today. She's having me take over the entire department." "You're taking over the entire floor," he said. "What's above you?" "Her office. Below that is for the board. That's where they meet and bitch at one another. You think she wants me to..." "Diego, I think she's grooming me." "She must be, I mean." Elena sat up and looked at him. "That's exactly what she's doing. I know it is." "Are you sure?" "She needs somebody, and she gave me an entire department. She's not young. She must be in her 50s, but you can't really tell." "She's probably older," he said. 60s. You wouldn't know." "Right, Elena laid back down. She watches me so closely, and I know she doesn't watch Lauren like this, or anyone else. They told me that all she cares about is whether or not the clients are satisfied, but she's surveying the people I work with, and she asked me why I'm there. She wanted to know about my career motivations. You're conflicted? I don't know. Do you think I'm crazy? No. She moved you to the 3rd floor as soon as you applied, and you just started. I think you might be right. Why are you there? Diego asked. Why do you do what you do? Have you ever asked yourself that? I told her it was because I wanted to help people, and I do. That wasn't my intention when I started. I just wanted to find a sensible career, but I'm tired of seeing people fail. I want to empower them, and I think that this firm is the only place where I'd have the resources to do that. I'm sure you could find somewhere else, Diego said. Fernanda is arguably the most powerful woman on the West Coast. What about the Gulf Coast? He asked. The Gulf Coast? Texas. Why Texas? Elena asked. Because they want to sign me in Santa Maria, and I haven't heard back from anyone else. You spoke with them? Yeah, he said. It's nice there. The people are real. There's a lot to do, and it'd take less time to fly to the Caribbean. It's a small town, she said. You like small. Yeah, I do. I'll go with you. You know that. You don't want to, he wasn't asking. Don't say that. She sat up to face him. It's what we want. He laid back down, and she took her place while they watched the sun set and the sky change. They were talking about possibilities, a distant future, and there was no planning life, not so far as Elena was concerned. Life was a ride, something that had to be experienced, not calculated or controlled. Things happened, and there was nothing she could do. She'd just have to stick to the man she loved. The next morning, Elena awoke to the sound 1,000 stringed instruments blasting Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. It was her ringtone, but she didn't recognize the number that was calling. She looked over to make sure that Diego was still sleeping and padded out into the hall. Hello? She answered in a drowsy voice. Hi, a cheery female came on the line. I'm calling for Elena Matthews. This is she. Elena, my name is Kylie, and I'm calling from Marquez Tequila. Oh, she wiped her eyes. Wait. She pulled the phone away from her ear to check the time. It's barely 7:30. I know, and I am so sorry to wake you up like this, but Mrs. Marquez wanted me to call you right away. She has a meeting in Chicago, and her flight leaves this afternoon. She mentioned that you knew a style coordinator? I do. Great. She's going to need you to give him a call and see if you can't work something in for her this morning. Okay, give me a half hour. I'll call you right back. She darted into her room to find something to wear. Is this your number? It sure is. Thanks. Elena hung up, pulled out the first suit she could find, and dialed Donovan's number. He was sleeping, for certain. But once he knew what was going to happen, he'd wake up, or she'd drag him out of his apartment by force. As expected, the phone went to voicemail, but after a few tries, the line clicked, and the sound of a dog yapping blasted through. Pookie, I will kill you! There was a high-pitched yelp. This is not okay. I've had 4 hours of sleep. It's a client. A what? Did you say client? Who? I wouldn't wake you up this early for nothing. Can you be at Fergie's in half an hour? 15 minutes. He hung up. There was a small fish market where they sold fresh-caught seafood on the way to the store. Elena stopped in and bought a smoked salmon platter, crackers, bread, every variety of caviar they carried, and fresh peeled shrimp. It cost her nearly $300, but she knew that it was her only chance to make a good impression. When she parked in the back lot, Chelsea was waiting by the dumpster, ready to help carry the supplies inside. She rushed over and flipped her head to the side so she could run her fingers through her hair and emphasize her new haircut. It was shorter and curled in at the tips, and it really did look good. But Elena didn't have the patience for a prolonged self-esteem session, So she made a quick remark and opened the trunk so Chelsea could help her move the food inside. They set it all on the front counter, and Elena surveyed everything. "I can't use these plastic caviar containers." "Here." Chelsea ran in back and pulled out a 3-tier serving platter. "Is that silver?" "I don't know, but it's gorgeous, isn't it?" She cleaned a set of porcelain saucers and used tiny spoons to plate the caviar. "That is so cute," Elena said, noting the floral design etched into the rim of the platter. "You haven't seen!" She jumped up excitedly and dragged her by her sleeve to the back of the store, where she'd stacked a set of plastic bins in the corner. She reached up to pull the top one out. There was a piece of masking tape on the front that said, "Steve." When she opened it, the smell of lemon oil poured out. "The clocks." Elena ducked down so she could run her hand along the wood impressions. It was like somebody had taken an eyedropper and squeezed out a piece of wood. The edges were ridged, like paint splatter, and the numbers were scorched into the surface. "These are handmade. There's 6 here, more than $2,000 worth." "How did you get these?" "Katie's selling." Chelsea stood up to replace the box. "Selling?" "Uh-huh." She lifted it up to the top of the pile and stood on her tiptoes to push it back into place. "And the shop is quite a bit less than the equity on House of Donovan." "How did you get her to sell it to him?" "She's been wanting to get rid of it for a while. She left all the work to me a few days ago." "I just can't believe she's letting him buy this place. She hates him." "Katie just wants the money," Chelsea said. "That's why she started the place. She doesn't even work here full-time. It's a side job. She was the one that made the offer." "Of course." Elena and Chelsea walked back into the lobby, where they shared a few scoops of caviar. "I hate this stuff." "Why'd you buy it then?" Chelsea scooped up a cracker full of beluga. "The client. She's not easily pleased, and I'm very worried about what she's going to do." "So you bought her caviar?" "Seafood's her thing," Elena said. "And she's a multi-billionaire. She's not going to want to come here, and once she sees the place," Elena sighed. "This is illegal, you know. Donovan could get in serious trouble for cutting hair in an unlicensed facility." "But once she sees what he does..." "Well, that's why I bought the caviar. If I can get her attention with the food, I might be able to get her to stay." Chelsea laughed. "Really?" "Yeah." "Is she mean?" "I swear, every time she moves, I flinch. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I want you to know that." "It doesn't matter," Chelsea said. "He can operate no matter what. They're not going to cut off his hands even if they do take his license away. That just means he can't work at a salon." "True. And he can work here as long as he wants. Now that Katie's gone and the sale's about to be final, we can do what we want." "What are you going to call the place?" "Diamond." Donovan strode inside, wearing a pair of black-tinted granny glasses and his signature black turtleneck and slacks. He rested his hand on his chin and leaned against the counter to look over the motley mess of seafood. "Fix that." He turned to Elena. "Get these things." He waved his hand around. "What things?" Chelsea wrinkled her nose. "These disgusting rags," he said. "Get them out. This is a boutique." Chelsea stared at the racks, then back at Elena. "I'll get it, but you need to help me. These things weigh a lot." "Gladly." Donovan pulled one end of the nearest rack, and Elena pushed the other. They came in small segments, so it wasn't as difficult as Elena thought, and there was room enough in the back lot for them to store them until they could go through the inventory and decide what to keep and what to throw out. When they came back inside, Donovan stopped just before he entered the main room. It was completely bare, save for the displays on either wall: old shoes, handbags, and belts, along with a host of rotten appliances and dishware. Chelsea was already filling up trash bags with high heels, and he was watching her warily. "Not those," he ran over, and snatched away a pair of white pumps. "They're Valenti. Find the labels. Shoes on the right. Elena, go get me a ladder." He took a scoop of caviar and watched as Elena dragged it in from the back of the building. "You may add the clocks." He motioned for Elena to pull the box down from the stack. "And the dresses?" "They'll be hung. Get my shoes box from the back room." He snapped his fingers, and Elena ran back to get them for him. "This is not Donovan." He was staring at the carpet, a thin blue mat covered in spots while Chelsea waited by the ladder. "I don't want to do the dresses yet." "Why not?" Chelsea asked. "You need to." He shook his head. "There's stains, and that." He pointed up to a line of yellow ceiling tiles that stretched from one side of the room to the other. "I can't have my dresses hanging under that. It's grotesque. They'll stay in the salon." That's what he was calling the utility room. Elena took a few bites of caviar and ate it with care, washing it down with water as she did. It tasted like she was eating a bucket of salt, and Chelsea and Donovan were bickering about what would go where. She was tired and sweaty. She wanted to go to the bathroom and check herself in the mirror, but she could already see Henrika pulling up in a bright red convertible. She stopped in front of the store and turned off the engine. Donovan turned to look out the front window. "That?" He pointed a quick finger in her direction. Elena shrugged and watched with mild amusement as Henrika stretched down as far as she could go to pull her seat back and squeeze out of the car. When she walked in, Donovan was shaking his head like somebody had just slaughtered his firstborn. Nevertheless, he stepped down from the ladder and walked over with his hand held out. "You are marvelous." He gave her the perfect smile. "Don't flatter me." She looked at his hand like he'd just spit on it. "I don't have time for the sales pitch. Thank you for this, Elena." "You don't mind?" Elena asked. "Is he good? Are you good?" Donovan scoffed and threw his head up before walking into the salon. "Girls," he called out. "Is he good?" Henrika repeated. "I would never send a billionaire to a bargain butcher." "What about the dress?" "Girls," Donovan sang out. "We'll have something for you." Elena motioned for her to follow them into the salon, where Chelsea was already pulling out boxes, a bag with hair-cutting supplies, a makeup palette, brushes, and applicators. He was an artist getting ready for a live performance, and it showed. His confidence had taken a hit. He was standing in the corner, rigid with his arms crossed. Elena couldn't watch. He wanted her there. It was obvious, but he was getting nervous, and she was worried her presence would only make things worse, so she helped herself to a few shrimp and watched from her place near the front desk as he worked. Henrika was astounded by his dexterity, the way he took her black bush of hair and washed away the mix of chemicals and curls until there was nothing but a long, flat strands. His fingers moved as if they were controlled by some robotic force, shaping it, sculpting it, trimming the damaged ends, angling the corners. He carved long waves from her 80s bush. One he curled and let it fall over her left eye, and on the sides, loose, shoulder-length curls. It was professional, elegant, and when she stood up to admire herself in the full-length mirror, strands of honey brown caught the light. She turned to the side and sucked in her stomach. She puffed out her chest and ran her fingers through the curls. Elena had never seen her smile or show anything close to sentiment. "Thank you." She sat back down and watched from a wooden mirror propped up on the sink as Donovan transformed her face. He contoured her flappy jaw and rounded it, giving her the perfect bright-eyed doll face. When she saw what he'd done, she looked up at him and said, "I am going to start telling everyone to come to you." "That's what they should have been doing." He stood up and stepped back. Everyone, Elena, Chelsea, and Henrika, laughed. "You're right, and you, Elena, you need to start telling people about him. I can't see any more of those creations." "She's right." Chelsea nodded from her designated workstation at the sink. "You should be recommending him to clients at the firm." "Make it your mission to put Nico on the streets," Henrika said. "That's what I plan on doing." "He's a fraud," Donovan cut in. The only reason they hired him is because his boyfriend is Miguel. Rios? Elena asked, surprised. Number 34. He nodded. The one with the rat goatee. I can't believe it, Elena said. He's so... butch. No. Donovan smirked up at her. Henrique covered her mouth to stifle a laugh. What are you going to have me wear? Donovan took a step back to inspect his creation. Empire waist? Hide it. Yes? He snapped his fingers and jumped over a cable to get to the dress rack sitting next to the sink. Black. Something mid-knee. Pleated skirt. Gold collar. He pulled the dress out to show it off. Girls? It's fantastic, Donovan, Chelsea said. Put her in it, Elena added. And black flats for the feet. Should we add leggings? No, Chelsea said. I don't think so either, Elena confirmed. She needs something. Hand me that. He pointed to a black case sitting next to the rack. This? Chelsea picked it up to hand it to him. Yes, here. He opened it up and turned his back so none of them could see what he was doing. Then he turned around, holding a single ruby pendant attached to a thin chain. This is a rental. You will be kind to it. It's my favorite. Really? Henrique held her hand up to her mouth. He wrapped the necklace around her neck. Beautiful. He doesn't say that, Elena said. He really doesn't. But she is. You're a Donovan girl now. Act the part. Strut. Keep your back straight. Keep your head high and be dainty. No more food. No. Henrique laughed. That's not happening, but I won't mess up the dress. I plan on keeping this thing nice. Elena met Chelsea's eyes, and they both smiled. Donovan whisked everyone out of the room so she could dress, and when she came out, it was amazing, seeing her strut with confidence. She thanked them all, and when she walked out, she was texting her assistant to send Donovan's number to her contact list with instructions to boycott Nico. Chapter 10. A simple white dress, something a stewardess in the 60s would wear with a skirt that came up past the knee. That was all Fernanda needed. She was poise, the fragrant embodiment of the principle. Walking beside her felt like an honor. Sitting in a restaurant booth in her personal restaurant was surreal. When she sat down, she folded her hands on the table and sat back to allow the waiter to fill up their water glasses. Thank you. She lifted it to her lips, allowing her gaze to fall into the cup, giving Elena the relief she needed to gather her composure. Then she set it down, and Elena felt it, like having a light shine directly into her pupils. Fernanda slid her phone across the table. On it was a picture of Henrique walking out of a restaurant covering her eyes. She was wearing the dress Donovan gave her. Who called the tabloids? Was it you? No. She wants exposure, and so does Donovan. Did you call? It was her idea. Did you suggest it? Fernanda asked. Yes. Good. Fernanda smiled. People complain about the paparazzi because playing hard to get looks good. In reality, they are the most sought-after people in Hollywood, and a very selective crowd. If they come to you, you are going to make money. You just bought me a lifetime client. I knew it. That's not universal. Using them can be a risk. You need to know who you are working with. And that's why I chose Henrique. She needed the boost to her confidence. I knew she'd want to come back to Donovan again, and that it would benefit her. She's insecure. But she doesn't let that show, Fernanda said. You read her well. Thank you. You're welcome. Foresight and the ability to read others is common. I can get that in anyone. What I need is somebody who can use that knowledge to manipulate the dynamic around them. I need to know that you have that ability. Elena pushed her glass away and leaned back. Why? I'm already head of the department. I don't want you to head the department. Do you know what I want you to do? I want you to replace me, she answered her own question. And you're going to. Why? You're not surprised? I knew when you asked me why I wanted to work for the company. I don't know why you've chosen me to do this, Elena said. It's not me. How did you get here? You think it was luck? Fernanda laughed, an almost mechanical sound. It wasn't, she declared. I don't know. You made a god fall in love with you. Then you moved to the top of the stadium. Now you're at the height of the corporate world, and you're asking me why. I don't know. You know, it's you that did it. She was confronting Elena, asking for her master strategy, but there wasn't one. She was wholeheartedly herself in every way. I met the right people. And the right people liked you. Fernanda took another sip from her water glass. The moment lasted longer than it should have. The space was too small. They were in a black square room, sitting in a black booth, and there was nothing but the white from Fernanda's dress to offset the effect. The door opened, and Elena turned back to see a waiter wearing a matching uniform walk in, carrying a tablet in his hand. He offered them a chicken or fish entree and a light salad. Even Elena's menu choice was scrutinized. It wasn't easy ignoring that while sitting across from a human spotlight, especially one that couldn't take her eyes off of her. When the waiter left, Elena looked down at her phone to give her something to distract herself, a clear sign of stress. Why do you do that? Put you on the spot? Yes, you're still testing me. Why? Are you moving? She folded her arms across the table and leaned close. Don't. I want to think about that. Elena set her phone in her lap to direct her attention. That's a lot to ask of me. Of course. She tapped a button on her phone, and the waiter gently knocked on the door to bring them their salads. Elena poured her vinaigrette over it and speared a piece of lettuce. She was going to occupy herself with her salad. You could be a corporate goddess, Fernanda interrupted, and I do mean that literally. You will regret turning this down for the rest of your life. I still don't understand why you want me. You make the right friends, she said. You're a new, fiery face. People will respect you, and you know how to strategize. Objectively, you will succeed. Elena laid her fork down. If Diego gets signed with another team, I'm going with him. That type of unrealistic mindset is below you. He won't last. You won't want him to. This is something nobody else can have. I'm a driving force in the economy. I'm just letting you know. Elena went back to her food and drowned everything else out. When the next course came, she didn't say anything until Fernanda set her napkin on the table and pushed her fish away. I need Donovan as style coordinator for Food for the World. When he gains a large clientele, I'll offer him a job with the firm. He's sort of the freelance type. I don't think he'll work for the company, Elena said. It's solid work, and without our clients, he won't have any business. You'll be the liaison between them. All communication must go through you. Okay. I can't understand how somebody as smart as you could possibly turn down what I'm offering you. This will last. Diego won't. It was like Fernanda was holding a nail to her skull, and she was pounding it in with her eyes. She wanted Elena. She really did. But Elena wasn't going to change her mind, and she knew it. That was heresy. This woman got what she wanted. There was no more about the subject. Somehow, Fernanda must have sensed that Elena had been alienated from her. There were meetings with clients all afternoon, and paperwork late into the night. It was the same tired game with them. Pitches, convince, drink. There was little variety, and she was beginning to wish for a challenge. Over the next few days, she was able to coordinate 4 appointments for Donovan. She was spending as much time at the boutique, watching the place grow and evolve. The antique wooden furniture and Victorian-style collectibles were exploited to their fullest. There were fairy tapestries hanging on the back wall, much to Donovan's dismay, and a section of the back corner dedicated to candles, incense, essential oils, and soaps. Chelsea had contacted a local group of sellers that attended the craft fair, the Crafts Guild, and she was interviewing possible suppliers. There were arguments about what was Donovan and what wasn't, but for the most part, she was given creative control. The couple worked well together, and they were more comfortable with compromise than they seemed. Donovan was a fan of the abstract paintings they saw at the fair. There was something about the different colors of paint splatter that he found aesthetically pleasing, so he had them displayed in the opposite corner, where he'd added a white shag and a simple seating area. It was as if there were a single owner of two minds, and he'd melded his style into a more colorful version of old Victorian elegance and modern flair. There was talk of paisley felt walls, but no chosen color, and wooden flooring, but no agreement on the wood they wanted to use. Lauren was moving on from her duties as liaison, and she was spending more time in her office. Elena was surprised when she got a call from Lauren and was invited for lunch at a sushi restaurant downtown. When she arrived, Lauren was already there, waiting with a platter of dragon rolls and a bottle of sake in a booth near the bar. Elena came over to give her a hug and sat down, noting her red mandarin collar dress and messy bun. "You are dressed for something," she said. "I am." "Anything interesting?" She took a dab of wasabi from the platter and added a dot of soy sauce in the center. "I'm meeting an exec this afternoon." "Really?" "Yeah, but you can't tell anyone. And I do mean that." She slammed a shot of sake and speared a piece of salmon with a chopstick. She plopped it in a mound of wasabi and soy sauce and let it sit in the mixture. "Why?" "Because Nora and I are moving to Angel City. Her mother is sick, and we need something solid, a job we can do ourselves without having to go work for some bullshit company." "You're starting a competing firm." "No, we're doing what I call the film circuit." "Hollywood?" "In the literal sense of the word," Lauren said. "They're loose-knit, more disorganized, and there's a lot of opportunity for freelancers to come in and offer their services. Every sideshow freak and drunk reality TV star in the country is looking for a way onto the red carpet. They need clothes, makeup, and somebody with a bullhorn to scream their name. Even the stars. "You want me to help, don't you?" Elena asked. "You have Donovan." "Fernanda wants me to be his liaison. She said there needs to be no outside communication between him and the clients. She'll know if I send your people to him." "Do you realize how stupid you sound right now?" She slurped her skewered piece of salmon. "I mean, really?" "Things are strange with her. She wants me to take over the firm." "Then you need a Hollywood connection, and she'll understand. Use it to your advantage." "Lauren, I'm not going to take the job." "You idiot!" She poured Elena a shot. "Take this." "What?" "No, I have to drive." "You need your ass kicked. Take it. Now." She pushed it across the table, giving Elena no other choice. It burned her tongue, but it was a relief. "It's Diego, isn't it? You stupid, stupid girl. Do you realize what you're giving up?" "I know what I'm saving, and I am not going to change my mind, not for all the money in the world." "That's exactly what you're being offered." Lauren leaned forward. "Things will go sour. You've been with him for a fucking year, for Christ's sake. Elena, what are you thinking?" "You don't understand." "Of course I do. You're just being stupid. For what? You're going to give Hollywood and screwing Fernanda up for a guy?" You're... Lauren shook her head and slammed down another shot. Then she pushed the bottle away. "I've literally never seen anyone do anything this stupid before. Listen, I have spent the past few days doing nothing but listening to exactly what you're telling me right now. Every time I see Fernanda, I get this from her. She's even got Alma talking about it. You were supposed to be my escape." "No, you're making the wrong decision. God, Elena, I can't believe I'm explaining this to you. You're an adult." "That's the point," she said. "I know the difference between puppy love and real romance. And I'm not going to validate my life choices to anyone, so stop." "Okay, but you'll still get me Donovan, right?" "Yes, but..." "So you don't want to get drawn into this because of Diego?" "I just don't want the pressure. Don't bring it up." "I won't." Elena finished her food and left early to go back home and rest. Diego was on the phone in the kitchen, sitting on a stool at the counter. He gave her a quick kiss and nodded along while he listened to whoever was talking. "Thank you," he said. Uh-huh, that'll work. He sounded excited. Elena took a seat beside him. Who is that? He smiled and held up a finger. I'll talk to you then. He hung up. Who was that? Elena asked. They want me in Santa Maria to meet with the owner. I thought we'd spend the night. What do you think? Have you ever seen the Gulf? No, what's it like? It's calmer, quieter. People go sailing a lot. I'm thinking of renting a boat. Yeah? Mm-hmm. He turned his stool to face her and took her hands in his. We'll sail under the stars and spend the night on the water. You're signing with them? He nodded excitedly. I am. How long is the contract? 4 years. Standard for a quality player, he said, eyeing her to test her reaction. Is that okay? You are going to Santa Maria, so I am going with you. That's just how it works. He pecked her on the cheek and hopped up to change and go out on the beach. They'd been spending most of their time near the water, swimming and lounging in the sand. There were trails upshore, where they could hike through the hills. He took her out to an overlook near the sea cliffs, and they spent the evening out there talking and basking in each other's presence. Diego lifted her up onto a boulder sitting near the edge. There was a groove where they could lay flat side by side and stare out at the water. When Elena laid her head on his chest, it looked like they were hovering above it. There was nothing but sky and sea, and the man that she loved. He spoke up when the sun started to set. You don't want to go with me. That's not true. It's okay to feel like that. I understand. It's a dream, she said. I couldn't run an empire. You could if you wanted to. You could do anything, and I don't want to stop you. Are you asking me to consider letting you leave me behind? She lifted her head to look at him. He took a breath. I know what you'd be giving up if you left. I have money. I'm living my dream, and you're just getting started. And I know that that is what you want, even if you won't say so. You and I are going to live our lives together, and don't you ever suggest otherwise. I love you. I just wish there was some other way. Diego closed his eyes, and his breath slowed. I'm so sorry. You didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, I did. I'm keeping you from... You don't know what you're walking away from, and that's what bothers me the most. You'll just give it up. You're too innocent. That's what everyone else has been telling me, and it burns, hearing you say that. You don't know how important you are, how good you've been, that you would suggest turning around and... We're never having this conversation again, she said. Never, he agreed. I won't even think like that. I'm sorry. It's wearing on you, though. It's going through my mind, he admitted. But I know you, and I know you're loyal. It's George and Francine. I went into the office and I think they're meeting with lawyers. Do you know why? Elena was concerned. Why else? They want to find a way to get me thrown out of the league. They can't do that, can they? It's sticky, he said. You never know. Then you have to leave the team as soon as possible. Before the end of the season, he confirmed. That's infuriating. What right do they have to destroy your career, and for what? So their stock can go up 0.5 percentage point? Less, he said. No, you need to hire somebody to stop them. Get yourself a lawyer. I have lawyers, but they're anticipating that. The best thing would be to run. He shifted his back uncomfortably. Then we'll leave as soon as we can. So long as you take the offer in Santa Maria, it should be fine, right? Yeah, it should work out in time. Good. Then we don't have to worry. She wrapped her arm around his stomach and cuddled close, letting the aura of warmth flowing off him shelter her from the sea breeze. Have you thought of Angel City? She whispered, stabbing herself in the heart with the suggestion. They won't take me, and it won't work. They have a losing lineup. That's too bad, she said. If there was another option, you know I'd take it, don't you? Yeah, she said, I do. They left soon after sunset, and he helped her down the steep trail, so they could walk back down to the house and enjoy a quiet moment in front of the television before they fell asleep together. Chapter 11. There was a crystal the size of Elena's head hanging above the front entrance. Below it, there was a wooden sign with the word Diamande, painted in blue cursive letters, set against a black background. Inside, the carpet had been torn up, and a temporary sheet of wooden laminate flooring had been rolled out. It was the color of honey and pine, and there was something about the scent of lavender that accented it perfectly. Chelsea was at the counter, speaking to a goth woman, wearing a faux Victorian coat when Elena walked. "Hello?" She darted over with a burst of excitement to give Elena a hug. "This is Alice," she said. Elena reached out her hand, and Alice shook it. She was wearing a silver ring with a ruby pendant in the shape of a skull. "It's nice to meet you." "And you," she lowered her head in respect. "Anyway, as I was saying, we can have the set in this evening. Are you sure you want the whole thing?" "Yes. Oh, I'm dying to have it in here. You have to see this." Chelsea held out her phone for Elena to see. There was a shelf full of dark fairy sculptures, black hair, purple, translucent wings, hovering above scrying mirrors like pools of ink. "These are amazing," Elena scrolled through, admiring their Victorian outfits. "You do this?" "Oh, yeah. We're thinking of making it a permanent collection." "I think you should," Elena said. "Have you had any luck with sales?" "I do the Renaissance Fair. I sell 1 or 2 pieces a year." "That's nothing." Elena reached into her purse and pulled out a piece of paper. She wrote her cell phone number on it. "I can sit down with you and talk about advertising, if that's something you're interested in." "It's not expensive, is it? That's thousands, right?" "Not even close. I'll do an initial consultation for $200. After that, you set your own budget." "Thank you." A touch of red appeared on her pale cheeks. "I'll be back with the order." She disappeared with a flash of black lace following behind her. "Isn't she gorgeous?" Chelsea watched her leave, inspecting her dress. "She is." "So you're doing advertising?" Chelsea asked. "Yeah, well, we have the department. I'll send her through to them." "Is it hard?" "No. Actually, you can do most of it yourself. But it's good to have people that know what they're doing. When I was in the Midwest, I knew a few people that could promote my clients. There's always strays you can hire." Elena checked the time on her phone. "Is Donovan ready?" "He's out back, talking on the phone. Listen." Chelsea looked around as if she were worried about being overheard. "Things are a little touchy with him." "Why?" "I don't want to say. It's his business." Now that Donovan was building up a clientele, he needed to be stable. He could either soar or crash to the ground. Whatever personal drama he had could be enough to destroy any chance he had at creating a career for himself. It was hard to read Chelsea. She was busy shelving items, new candles, a line of floral-shaped soaps, and there were tapestries that needed to be folded and put away on a shelf on the back wall. They were one of her biggest sellers. The entire time she remained neutral, humming softly, and showing items off while they waited for Donovan. Elena couldn't tell if everything was all right, or she was trying to distract them both from the real issue. It wasn't until the back door opened and Donovan whirled through that Elena knew how bad things were. "Put my appointments on hold," he rushed past with the stench of weed following behind him. He locked himself in the utility room. "Can we find a way to cover that up?" Elena asked. Chelsea set a stack of tapestries on the shelf and ran around the front desk to pull out a stick of sandalwood incense. "It's not going to work." She lit it and placed it in a holder by the register. "So long as he's careful," Elena said. "I don't see it being a problem." "Oh, there will be trouble." A bald gorilla in human form ran inside, past a startled Chelsea and Elena. He lifted a fist and pounded the door to the utility room. "Get out now!" "What do we do?" Elena had her phone in hand. She had finger on the call button, and 911 was already dialed in. "Give it a second," Chelsea glanced down at the screen. I don't want the police here. I said open up the damn door. He kicked it, leaving a gash that went halfway through. Open it! Ask him to leave, Elena whispered. He could attack. And what about Donovan? The door opened fast, slamming the man in the face. He jumped back and hopped up into the air, like a kangaroo with boxing gloves. I won't hesitate you. Arr! He fell back screaming with a hot curling iron sitting on his forehead. You're lucky to be alive. Donovan darted out and kicked him in the ribs. Monster! I'm calling, Elena said. They'll take Donovan if they see the burn. Shit. She rested the phone on the counter. The man was wailing, rolling on the ground. You did this. You hurt him. You can't say shit. Donovan lifted his foot to stomp him in the forehead. I'll go. He shot up and rushed to the door, clutching a bright red spot on singed skin. Try it! Donovan hurled the curling iron at him. You'll go to jail! The iron hit the back of the man's bare ankle, and he jumped out the door with a yelp and started running. I'm sorry. Donovan turned to walk back into the salon. You need to explain yourself. Chelsea followed after him. Nico, he hissed. He can't have me, and he's mad that I took his clients. How did it get to that? Elena found him sitting in his chair in the salon. He attacked Jacob at the bar last night. Now he wants to hurt me. I'll go to the courts, Chelsea. He'll be taken in for a felony if he comes back. Is that enough? Elena asked. He's ashamed of himself, Donovan said. We won't see him again. Good, Chelsea sighed and turned back to the lobby. There was a mark on the floor where the curling iron landed. There was nothing she could do about it unless she laid down a rug. It would have to stay until they changed the flooring. Donovan quickly went back to work, apologizing as they gathered his supplies, and he told them about Nico. They were together years ago, and their relationship was tumultuous. Nico fell into drugs and alcohol. He used cocaine, and Donovan more than suspected him of using speed. That was when he left him, and Nico decided to become a fashion guru, just like his ex. It wasn't because he was any good, or because he had an interest in fashion. He had a complex, and he wanted to compete. He became friends with Francine, and he convinced her to drop Donovan, which was why Donovan's career was failing. It was a carefully calculated vendetta from a psychotic ex. Now Jacob, Donovan's boyfriend, was covered in bruises and scars. Donovan sat down in the barber's chair and pulled out a picture to show them when he was done sweeping the salon. He is ruthless. Chelsea covered her mouth with a gasp. Jacob was going to take weeks to recover. There were cuts on his cheek and the side of his mouth, and his eye was swollen into a blood-red lump the size of an orange. Elena was shaking her head. She took the phone from his to inspect it. Do you have any proof that he did this? No, he said. Nico attacked him in the parking lot outside the club. Nobody saw. Now this. He pointed to the burn hole in the lobby. I can't show the police that. I'll get a restraining order and he'll move on. I should have done it a long time ago, but I didn't want to upset him. Elena's phone vibrated in her pocket. She pulled it out and stepped into the lobby so she could talk. Hey, Lauren came on the line, sounding out of breath. I'm here, and I need some help. At the shop? Yeah, I'm out back. Come meet me. Elena found her standing by her moped with another parked beside it. She was talking to a short-haired ginger with geek glasses. They both waved her over. Immediately, Elena could see why they called her. This is Nora. Hi. Elena shook her hand, eyeing the pair of black slacks she was wearing. There was a mud stain traveling up the side. What happened? Some truck came up beside her on the freeway and splashed this crap all over her. I need help, and I hate to ask. I know you have an appointment, but I need to get to Angel City. She's meeting with somebody about a premiere, Lauren announced with a cold stare. Do you mean a Hollywood film premiere? Elena asked. Couldn't say. Lauren kicked at the gravel. Yes, Nora confirmed Elena's suspicions. Don't be so childish. It's her choice. Elena had no idea that Lauren was so contentious about her decision to leave the city. She thought her reaction was just a characteristic burst of vulgarity. Lauren eyed the street. Are you going to help her? I prefer suits, Nora said. I look terrible in a dress. I think he has something, but let's go inside. Lauren made for the back door. Donovan was in the back room standing next to a circular table covered in dishware. He was helping Chelsea clear it off. When he saw the mud stain on Nora's pants, he set down the saucepan he was holding and let his eyes fall down her body. Green. She wants a suit, Lauren said. No, I don't do suits, but I have slacks. You'll wear an earthy green blouse, something. He cocked his head. Darker, and your hair needs texturing. Come on. He hooked his arm in Nora's, and they started to walk into the lobby. How do you feel about a pixie cut? Elena heard him ask. Chelsea eyed Lauren's cigarette when they disappeared around the corner. There's no smoking inside, Elena told her. Sorry, you know. Elena turned around to follow Nora and Donovan. She wanted to make it very clear. She wasn't going to talk about her decision to leave town. Lauren understood, but it was obvious that Elena's choice was really bothering her. Chelsea pulled Elena into the back room to have her help clear off the rest of the table. What are you going to do with this? Elena pulled a box of silverware off the table and set it on the ground. It's going in the middle over the spot. Chelsea opened up a dresser sitting next to the back door and pulled out a bouquet of fake violets. Do you think it'll look nice? You should add some roses in. They have white ones in the flower shop on 12th. They're scented, aren't they? Elena nodded. I should go get something to wipe this dust off. Why is Lauren so upset with you? She wants me to stay in town for my career. Elena started for the door. Why, though? Chelsea pressed her. She stopped. Fernanda wants me to take over the firm, and they want you to choose that over Diego. It's not happening, Elena said. You know that. I do. I just don't see why you can't drive down from Angel City. It's not that far. I had to drive further to get to Friskies when I first started dancing. No, we're not going to Angel City. She turned around to face Chelsea, who was pulling a porcelain vase out of the drawer. We're going to Texas. Why did he turn them down? Chelsea held it up to inspect it. There was chip running down the side, but it was barely visible in the orange glow from the bulb above. He didn't turn them down, Elena said. They didn't offer him a position. Oh. She set it down on top of the dresser. It's just, are you sure? Because I was talking to Stella, one of the Hawk ladies, and she said that he told them that he was too good for the team. I am so sorry, Elena didn't hear anything she said after that. She ran out the back door in a blur of tears, struggling to catch her breath in between sobs. When she got to her car, she sat down and let her head collapse against the steering wheel. The horn blared, and she sat up to look around. Maybe, she thought, this was the perspective she needed. She pulled a compact out of her purse and dabbed her face with a napkin so she could cover her red, tear-stained cheeks with a layer of foundation. She was about to fix her mascara when she jolted back at the sound of somebody tapping on her window. It was Chelsea. She looked like she'd been crying as well. Elena opened the door, stepped out to speak with her. I don't want to ever talk about this again, or him, again. This never happened, and don't you dare feel guilty. This is good. Chelsea nodded with a sniff. Henrica's here. She wants to speak with you. Did she say why? I thought she just needed a dress for a date. There's something wrong. Are you sure you can? Come on. Elena led her back into the lobby, where Henrica was pacing near the front window. She stopped when she saw Elena and came over to meet her. I don't think I'll be needing your services any longer, but I still need to see Donovan. Do you have a problem with that? No, are you canceling your contract with the firm? That's what I just said. Henrika looked out at the salon. May I ask why? Look, I'm not here for a hard sale. I want my hair done, and I want to buy a dress. You tell Fernanda that if she bills me for this session, I will take her to court. He is a third party. Absolutely, Did she do something? She gave me water with rocks in it and I almost choked. It was disgusting. Then she tried to sell it to me for $500. She had the balls to tell me they were diamonds. I will sue. She kept a close eye on the salon door like a bull ready to charge inside. The firm won't bill you for this session, but his services are not free. That's what I said. Henrika jabbed a finger at Elena. She let it fall and let her eyes slice right down Elena's body, like a butcher weighing a cut of meat. I don't want her business. You don't have to go through her, Elena countered with a smile. Pitch me. I will use my connections at the firm and through third-party contractors to provide you with personalized service, and I will charge you a small percentage of what you pay Fernanda. How much? Henrika narrowed her eyes. 10%, quarterly. We'll see how you do. I could lose my job. Have your legal team draw up a confidentiality agreement, and I won't charge you until the end of your contract. Can you agree to that? Absolutely. She straightened her dress out and waited for Donovan to finish with Nora and Lauren, who'd decided to allow him to apply some makeup and show her a few outfits. She came away with a leather skirt and a tight white top. Nobody seemed to notice what had happened before, when Elena ran out into the car, but Lauren did glance her way before she left. Elena could have sworn she was smiling. Chapter 12. It was more than just the lie. It was a cold tension, a quiet that had settled in the house. Diego felt it, but he never said a word, so Elena kept silent. She laid down next to him at night. She kissed him, and she told him that she loved him, because she did. But something was broken. They both knew it, but to address it would have been traumatizing. So they stayed on their respective sides of the bed, and they didn't talk. Elena used to love to listen to the sound of him breathing. She would stay up at night and let it fill her ears. It was proof that the man that she loved was there. He was alive. He cared about her. She would never question his loyalty. In truth, she still didn't, but he lied to her. She sat up to look around. The dawn light was pouring in and her eyes hurt. She didn't sleep. Instead, she stayed up listening to him. He talked, and he rolled around. He threw his arm over her stomach, and he let it sit there for hours. She didn't want to move it. It felt like betraying him. It was barely 8, but she wanted to get to the office early. The Food for the World Gala was coming soon. She wouldn't be there. That had been discussed, and all parties agreed that her presence wouldn't be required. She could coordinate and dress the freak show, but she promised herself that she would never go to one of those charity events ever again. The light was harsh, and she had to cover her eyes when she walked outside. Everything was clear and fresh, like the world was screaming out to her, pounding against her skull. It was even worse when she got on the freeway, when the sun had risen and the temperature rose. This was a beach day. There were crowds of people laying out in lawn chairs and children running through the surf. She didn't want to see that. Diego was laying in bed at home, probably beating himself up for what he'd done. She wanted to be angry, and she was angry. But for the most part, she was just a pathetic mess, crying at odd times and spending quiet moments alone, thinking about what she was going to do. When she parked her car, her phone screen lit up in the center console. She took it out and saw Diego's name sitting at the top of the screen. I'm sorry. She threw the door open with a howl and sent her phone flying across the parking garage. Fuck you. Her voice echoed out, and she looked around to make sure that nobody was looking. She was alone, but she couldn't be doing this. People would talk. She ran to grab it, her breath racing. When she ducked down to pick it up, the battery was sitting a few feet away, and the screen was cracked. No, 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 no. She shoved the battery back in and pressed the power button. Dear God, no. It lit up. The phone company's red logo came on screen. It was working. She walked back to the car and pulled her purse out. She wasn't going to talk to him. She was going to use this anger. It was going to give her the strength to walk into the tower and do what she'd been planning to do since Chelsea told her that Diego lied to her. Diego turned down the job in Angel City because the team was a mess, and most of the players were too busy with the girls and the booze to play properly. Playing for them would cut the value of his contract in half, and he wouldn't be able to recover from it. It was a career decision, and a wise one, but he would still make millions playing for Angel City, and she'd have her job at the firm, running the economy. He could have given her what she wanted, but instead, he chose to make a selfish decision for his own personal gain. That son of a... She took her phone out in the elevator. He sent 3 more messages, saying that he was sorry, that he loved her, and that he wanted to talk to her. Why did it take so long? He wasn't admitting what he did. That cut deep, and left her with a sour feeling that just seemed to grow as she walked into her office. He wanted to make it seem like what he did was better than it was. He'd make excuses and find every reason he could to keep from validating what she felt. Doing that would mean accepting the fact that he'd done something so terrible that she wasn't sure she could ever forgive him. She turned the lights low in her office and lit a stick of incense, something to freshen the air and make it easier for her to relax. This wasn't her life struggle, she decided. This was an obstacle, one that she had to ignore so that she could do what she knew to be best. Right now, she needed to breathe and find a way to get past the fact that she hadn't slept the night before. There were still water bottles left after Margot gave up her contract. They were just purified water. The crystals were added later, but Elena was glad to have them. She put a refrigerator next to her desk and kept it filled. When she pulled one out and took a drink, she tried to focus on nothing but the feeling of the water flowing down her throat. It felt good, and by the time she was ready to leave, she felt refreshed. It wasn't enough for her to regain her full composure, but at least she'd have the strength to physically walk out of her office and into the elevator. Lauren walked out when the doors opened and stared her straight in the eye. "You need to come with me." "What? Why?" "Just do it." She walked past her and down the hall towards her office. Elena was hesitant, but ultimately she wound up following her inside. When she sat down, Lauren handed her a cigarette, and without a word, Elena took it. It had been far too long, and the smoke hitting the back of her throat was like a shot of heroin. She handed the lighter back and blew a thick cloud up into the air. "Ahem." She cleared her throat and watched as Lauren took a seat, leaned back and threw her feet up onto the desk. "I don't know what's going on and I'm worried. You don't have to say shit, but I need to know what you're going to do. Are you leaving?" "I don't know." "Are you still living at the same place?" Elena took another puff. "Yes." "Is that going to last?" "Please don't ask me that." A burst of smoke flew out her mouth. "Too painful?" Elena responded by bracing herself to stand up, ignoring the tears that were starting to flow down her cheeks. "Come on, listen. You're not a kid, okay? Yeah, it does suck. I don't know what happened, but I can see that look on your face, like you're ready to fall over and crack into little pieces. But you still have a decision to make. Where is your life going to go?" Elena nodded, openly crying now. "You don't want to work here. I know you don't. So don't try to lie. I want to offer you an alternative." "You want me to come to Angel City?" "Yeah, I do. I think that you are too good for this place, and you'll have a lot of freedom to grow there. You're not like these people. You're good, and you care. You're not going to want to do the thing Fernandez does to run this company." Elena took another drag and set her cigarette down in the ashtray sitting on the desk. "I don't know." "What are you going to do when you go up there?" "I'll tell you after. Elena took one last puff and butted her cigarette before thanking Lauren and walking to the elevator. She wasn't sure what would happen, or whether or not she was making the right decision. This was the stupidest, most exciting thing she had ever done. She felt like she was about to jump out of the elevator into the ocean below. That's what this was. A death-defying, reckless mistake. So why did it feel so good? When the door chimed and she stepped out, she strode into the seating area and sat down across from Fernanda, who was there waiting with a tablet sitting between them. "Are you sure?" Fernanda asked. "I am." "Why?" She crossed her legs and leaned back in her chair, her arms outstretched as if she were holding the world out to her. "Because I know myself, and it doesn't matter what happens with Diego. This isn't where I want to be." "You are heartbroken, and you're making a terrible mistake because of it," she said. "I don't know what else to do. If he does leave, I might want to go with him. If I stay, I know that I won't want to sell liquor for the rest of my life. Is that really a mistake? Following your values?" "You're asking for my opinion, aren't you?" Fernanda asked. "Well, it's a difficult question." "I don't know," she said. "I really don't. You don't have to sell liquor, though." "I know." Elena stood up. "I'll leave within a month." "You're not obligated to do so. If you change your mind, you can stay." "Thank you. This has been an honor." Fernanda walked Elena out to the elevator and stood, waiting awkwardly until it came. Before the doors opened, she reached out to hug her. "You'll find your way." Chapter 13. Elena turned off her phone and disappeared. She kept her office door locked and turned off the lights so she could be alone with her breath, the sandalwood, and the darkness. She knew that right now, while she sat there, wondering whether or not she should be crying or rejoicing, the man that she loved was at home, tortured by his own thoughts. He did this. She was just trying to make the best life she could with the man that she loved. She saw the gulf, an unremarkable line of water stretching out past a shore of pebbles and reeds. There would be a house, much like the one she lived in now, and a place for them to sit out on the porch together, just like they did in Ocean Beach. But that place was empty. This city wasn't just filled with socialites and Botox queens. That was her shallow judgment of a culture she didn't understand. There were people that she loved here. Her life changed when she came to the city. She rose from the bottom of the corporate food chain, a veritable nomad in the world of PR, to a successful businesswoman with the certainty of millions just a few years away. She just had to choose how she was going to make them. She fell in love here, just a few miles away from where she was sitting. And her relationship, whether it was over or not, was still a part of this place. Their memories were here. They were happy here. If they left, she felt like she'd be leaving a part of their love behind. Their move would be tainted by what he'd done. She'd always think about how he lied to her to pull her away from a successful career and a place in this tower because he wanted to maintain his success. What made his career more important? Why would he put himself first? He had what he wanted, and she was just starting to realize her potential. She pushed her chair back and pulled her phone off the desk. It chimed when she turned it on, not once or twice. It was a burst of notifications. He was frantic, and she didn't want to hear what he had to say. She felt betrayed, and she couldn't see him like this. She texted him, "I'm not coming home tonight." There was a response, but she turned the phone off again before she could see it. She decided to go knock on Lauren's door. Alma was gone, so she wouldn't be able to tell anyone what Elena was about to do, and that was probably better, because she wasn't proud of herself. Lauren came to the door with her pack held out, and a lighter for Elena. "Let's go get as drunk as possible." Elena lit her cigarette. Lauren walked back in to grab her things. "Freaking finally. Leave your car here. We're having a taxi night." By taxi, Lauren meant that they wouldn't be able to walk by the time they left the bar, and that was exactly what Elena wanted. She'd die in a blur of drunken visions and club music and wake up somewhere she didn't belong. They'd laugh and cry, and she'd have her night away. She didn't want to think about anything after that. Lauren made partying a science. They would start at a pub downtown where they had private booths and a cute bartender while they took their 2 preliminary shots of whiskey. Liquor before beer, she explained while they were in the taxi on the way there. What does that mean? It's a rule, Lauren said. Liquor before beer, nothing to fear. Beer before liquor, never been sicker. Oh, well, I want something sweet. No sugar, Lauren explained. You'll wake up with a bad hangover and you'll get sick. Just drink shots and dark beer. Why dark? Elena asked. Because it tastes better, of course. She pointed to a building on the corner up ahead. That's it. Shanties. The cab pulled up to the building, and Lauren hopped out so she could offer Elena a hand. Thank you. They sat down at a booth across from the bar and waited while Lauren ordered their shots. She watched her, chatting with the bartender, a muscular blonde in a tight shirt, and a pair of jeans that might as well have been a second skin. He was watching her too, while he reached under the bar to pull out their beers, and it was obvious by the way he glanced up at her when he poured their shots that he was attracted to her. She looked back down at the table and quelled a surge of unwanted thoughts and emotions. Don't sip it or I'll sock it right out of your hand. Lauren slammed her shot of whiskey down on the table, along with a bottle of beer. Elena took it fast and guzzled half her beer down to get rid of the aftertaste. Ah, she sighed. Lauren laughed. You got beer dripping down the side of your mouth. Do I? Yup, drink fast. 2 drink limit at the pub. Unless, Lauren turned to the bartender who quickly occupied himself with something on the other side of the bar. Don't do that, Elena said. And why not? Because, and that is the only explanation you will get all night. I did not come here to discuss him, and I'm not going to let you spend the whole night trying to get me laid. You're boring, Lauren took another drink. What did you tell Fernanda? I quit, and you can call me boring all you want, but you have to admit that took balls. So you're coming to Angel City? I don't know. I might. Well, what are you going to do if you don't? Elena replied without hesitation. I'm going to get drunk tonight. That's all I know. You should come take a look anyway. We're checking out some beach houses next week, and it'd be fun to show you around. I could. Elena was watching the bartender out of the corner of her eye. He was pouring 3 shots of whiskey. He brought them over to where they were sitting. Ladies on the house. Thank you, but... Take your damn shot. Lauren snatched hers up and raised it. The bartender did the same, which meant Elena would have to join in. To getting screwed up? Lauren called out. To getting screwed up. The bartender gave Elena a wink when he threw his back, a gesture that was not lost on Lauren. So what are you up to tonight? Lauren took a drink from her beer. Well, I thought I'd stay in and watch the game. He stuck his hands in his pockets and swung his hips back and forth. Yeah? Who's playing? The Ocean Hawks, Elena said. Are they? You follow football? The bartender asked. One of friends was on the team. Stay for a while, he said. Watch. We have the giant flat screen behind the bar and a full kitchen. I could get you guys a menu if you want. Thanks, but you got any jalapeno poppers? Lauren stretched her arms out across the back of the booth. I make them myself, actually. Really? Go get some of those. And another round. Sure. He walked back behind the bar to turn the TV on. What are you doing? Elena whispered. You're watching him, Lauren said. I am not. Her response was definitive. Don't do that. Now he's going to get me drunk and try to screw me. How is that bad? Respect my wishes. Elena turned to the TV. 2 announcers, men she'd avoided several times, were laughing about the Hawks' latest loss, wondering how quick the game would go. The screen faded to a spinning white smiley face on a black background. The words, breakneck reviews slid across the screen. The announcers came on again, and Daryl Johnson, who Elena called douche number 1, turned to Mike Parker, douche number 2. "That left hook, man." He shook his head like he'd just seen a stripper bend over. A picture of Diego came up on screen. They'd given him a gorilla body with oversized muscles. His eyes bulged out of his sockets, and he threw his head back and roared. "Let's roll it," douche number 2 sounded out. They switched to a security camera feed from George's office. He was sitting behind the desk laughing with a group of men. The frosted glass windows on the side of his office door shattered inwards. He shot up out of his chair, and Diego reached inside to unlock the door. The second Diego had it open, he jumped over the desk and tackled George to the ground. "Woo!" the douche number 1 hollered. The video froze when Diego raised his right arm to punch George the face. "I think he's recovered, Daryl. Maybe he can learn to box in prison." "I have to go." Elena stood up and suddenly fell to her knees. She braced herself against the table just before she hit the ground. "Whoa." Lauren's voice sounded like it was coming from miles away. There was a pair of arms wrapping themselves around her waist. Her vision was clouded with dark spots, and she could have sworn that she could hear him screaming. Whether it was the TV or her own imagination, she didn't know. The bar was a blur, and the room was moving faster than she was. The bartender came out, clouded a fog of tears and nausea. "Are you okay?" His voice was clearer now. Elena focused on her breath and let Lauren help her to her feet. "Take me to the house," she said. "That's not a good idea." "Take me there now." Lauren helped her sit down at the booth and used her phone to call a taxi while Elena sat with her head resting in her hands. She waited while the announcers went on about how George was brutally assaulted in his own office by an ex-team member. They went on to talk about Diego's failed contract with the Santa Maria Crocodiles and how his career was probably over. There didn't seem to be any consistency or form to what was happening. Elena was closing her eyes, tuning everything out, while she struggled to keep breathing. "Here." The bartender came with a glass of water, and she took a long sip, allowing herself to come back to the moment. "Thank you," she said. I hope you're okay." He lingered a little longer than he should have. "Take this." Lauren shoved a card at him, and he walked away. "Give me your phone." Elena reached out. "What's wrong with yours?" "I cracked the screen. Look up OBPD. On the website, they have a list of inmates." "You're not going to visit him, are you?" Lauren asked. "If he did that, he had a good reason." Elena sat up, fully restored. "He's in holding on the south side." "How long is the cab going to take?" Elena asked. "Drink your water." Lauren ordered herself another shot and waited outside to watch for them, while Elena looked through her text messages. There was no sign of what had happened, just a string of desperate pleas. He wanted Elena to tell him what happened. He didn't know why she was upset, and he needed to know what was going on. He begged her to tell him, and he told her how sorry he was. He just needed an answer. The last message was at 12:32. After that, there was a phone call at 2:30 and no voicemail. It was after 5 now. This had just happened. "All right," Lauren came up behind her. "What do you want to do?" "I'm going to go to the house to get money to bail him out, and I don't care what you have to say about it." Elena stood up and walked through the ensuing wave of nausea. There was money at the house that she could use to bail him out, and if the bond was high, she could use one of the accounts. She was confident that he wouldn't have to stay in jail. Chapter 14. "I don't think they're going to let him out." Lauren opened her window and lit a cigarette. They were in the back of the taxi driving to the house. "They're going to give him bail." "It's a violent crime," she said. "They might hold him." "We'll get him out." "I know a lawyer that parties with a lot of the judges." She took a drag. "He might be able to work something out with them." I'll keep that in mind. Elena had to roll her window down to deal with the smell from the smoke. It was giving her a headache. Her phone vibrated in her pocket, and she pulled it out. Hello? Elena, it's Fernanda. Hi. I need you to come to the tower. She sounded breathless, like she'd been running. I don't think that's going to be possible, Elena responded. It's for your own safety. My safety? Elena pulled the phone away from her ear and pressed the speaker button. Have you seen the news? Fernanda asked. Lauren leaned in to listen to what she was saying. Yeah, I did. Then you know about the assault. I need you under guard right now. We're worried about retaliation. From who? Elena turned to Lauren, confused. Anyone. He attacked the owner of a major league team. There will be an escort here waiting to take you to the stadium. Okay. What happened? And where is Diego? I've spoken with George about the situation, and he's dropping charges. I don't know all of the details, but they won't be holding Diego. The rest will be explained when you arrive. Are you camera ready? No, Elena laughed to her surprise. Then you need to be. Lauren, Fernanda called out. Yes. Bring Donovan to the arena and make sure that none of the clients know why. Yes, ma'am. She flicked her cigarette out and rolled her window up. Fernanda was waiting near the perimeter gate. She had a pair of guards escort Elena out of the taxi into an SUV they had waiting for her. Another car was there to take Lauren to pick up Donovan at the shop. Fernanda rode next to Elena in the back seat, monitoring her phone while they wove through traffic. Elena expected her to give her some sort of an explanation, but the woman seemed busy with something else, and it was beyond frustrating. I need to know why this happened. He'll tell you. Fernanda wasn't going to say anything else, so Elena watched out the windshield as they took the exit to the and waded through the congested downtown streets until they could find a space between the cars large enough for them to turn into the stadium's back entrance. It had been cordoned off by what looked like a small army of men wearing simple black and white suits. Are these your men? Elena asked. Yes. Fernanda pressed a button on her phone, and they parked near the back door, where men were waiting to shield them from view so nobody could see them running out of the SUV. Go to the top floor and wait in George's office, Fernanda instructed when they entered the building. Am I even allowed in there? The woman rested a hand on her hip. Go. Where will you be? In the lobby. She disappeared out the back door, leaving Elena alone with the escorts. They were silent watchers, flanking her from both ends as they led her to the elevator. If Fernanda wasn't going to tell her what happened, they weren't. They were under her command, and she wouldn't tolerate dissent. She would have to wait. An impossible task. The top floor had been cleared out. The glass was swept up, and there were 2 guards wearing the same uniforms that Elena saw earlier. There were 2 behind the desk, and another guarding George's office. Through the broken windows, Elena could see the domed glass room and the desk. It had been lifted off the ground and replaced. Save for it, and a pair of chairs, the office was completely empty. Elena had nothing but her cracked cell phone and her imagination to occupy herself while she waited in the room alone. She sat down behind the desk and let her fingers trace over the dark wood. It was burgundy, like dried blood. George dropped the charges, but the prosecutor's office could still decide to charge Diego. He could be seen as a violent criminal. Unless, of course, Fernanda did something. Why was she involved? Why did she care so much about what happened, and what was she doing with the press in the lobby? There was a master plan, and Elena could never be fully certain whether or not she should be trusted. But for the moment, she seemed to have good intentions. The room was designed to jut out over the water. Elena's back was to the ocean, and she was surrounded by glass. On either side of the door, she could see a faint glow from the city, and spotlights crossing through the sky. She closed her eyes and imagined that this was her office. She was the head of a major conglomerate, and the world moved at her command. Diego wasn't there. She was sitting in the room alone, and there were guards all around. That's exactly what it would be like. She'd have power and money, but she'd be sheltered from the world. She wouldn't have the man that she loved. She couldn't live like that. She loved too much, and somewhere beneath her confidence and her determination, there was a girl that just needed to be loved back. Otherwise, she'd never be happy. Diego knew that, so he did everything he could to satisfy that part of her. That's why she trusted him. She knew that he'd never do anything to hurt her, and if somebody tried to lash out, he'd come after them. She didn't understand why he lied, but she decided as soon as she saw him on TV that whatever it was, he had a good reason. The spotlights went out at some point, but Elena barely noticed. She was listening to the guards shuffling outside of the office. She focused on the door until it finally did open, and a sliver of light traveled across the room. All at once, it flew open, and Diego ran inside to pull her sobbing form up out of the chair. She didn't even know that she was crying until her head rested on his chest, and her tears stained her shirt. He had his arms wrapped around her, and he was warm, solid, alive, and breathing. That warmth covered her, and it was all she could think about. It became her sole point of focus, like a star that wouldn't let her look away. He drew back and looked down at her. She had another object to worship, his eyes, and the tear falling down his face. She lifted a finger to swipe it away. "Did they charge you?" He shook his head, and she could see that he was enchanted, looking at her like he could barely believe she existed. "You were mad. You lied to me about Angel City." "I didn't." He stepped away, and a bitter look crossed over his face. He was holding his phone in his hand. He hopped up on the desk to take a seat and pulled up what looked like the surveillance video. "When I came to tell them about Texas, I stood outside the door and I heard them talking." He pressed play. George took a seat behind his desk. There were 3 men waiting to see him, all wearing suits. "Tell me what you've come up with," he said. The man to his left opened up the laptop sitting in his lap. He took a moment to scroll through a document. There's no legal recourse against him. He's a free agent. He can go where he wants." "I know that," George said. "Can I get him for breach of contract?" The man to his right spoke up. "You can't. He's following every single clause." "He knows the clauses." The man in the center leaned forward. "You're going to have to play him." "No, I don't want him injured. He could sue us. I think we should go after Elena. He'll be too upset to play if she's hurt." "Have you spoken with security at the estate?" The man on the left pulled up another document. "The night shift is willing to let us in on Thursday." "And the poison?" The glass burst, and Diego rushed into the room. He stopped the video and set it aside with his head still slumped. "I'm sorry that I did that." "Did you just apologize?" Elena wrapped her arm around his neck. "I forgot what happened. I didn't see until after they dragged me out. I think I remember hitting him, but I couldn't tell if it was real or not until I saw the video. Fernanda showed George when she bailed me out and he ran." "But why are you apologizing?" He looked up at her with bright red eyes and a twisted look on his face. "Because I could have gotten myself thrown in prison, and you would have been alone." She laughed and hopped onto the desk so she could hold him. "You probably saved my life." I just wanted to smash his face in and hear him scream. "When he talked about you, I forgot where I was. I don't like that I can do that." "That was love," Elena said. "I guess it was, wasn't it?" They both laughed, and a tear fell down her cheek. What did happen with Angel City? Every team in the league with a bad lineup called him. He turned them all away, saying that I wasn't leaving. Somebody probably overheard. "Even if you had lied, Diego, I still would have gone with you." "I wasn't sure at first. It feels good to hear you say that because if you stayed, I would have lost my mind over you." She wiped another tear away and scooted back so she could lay her head down in his lap and close her eyes while he stroked her hair. "I quit my job," she whispered. I told Fernanda that I couldn't work with her and I can't. I don't want to. And you? What are you going to do? I don't know, he said. I know that we will always have money. But you can't play, can you? No, but I will find a way. He didn't sound like he really believed that. Both of them knew that he'd just lost his dream, but they didn't want to think about that. Elena dwelt on the moment and reminded herself that he was free and that they were together. Chapter 15. There was a miniature salon setup in a conference room on the ground floor. It was just a chair with a case for shoes and a garment bag, but it felt like a traveling house of Donovan when he hopped out the door and pulled Elena into a hug. When Chelsea and I saw the news, and we both started bawling. We thought he was going to go to prison and, oh my God, Donovan stepped back. You're safe, right? Elena nodded. She had her arms pulled tight across her chest. Is he going to jail? No. Thank God. Donovan hopped into the air excitedly. Chelsea was so worried. They wouldn't let her come. They wouldn't tell me anything. It doesn't matter. Come. He turned back and had her sit down in his chair. I look okay, don't I? I was told a full cover-up. He produced a bottle and a stack of cotton pads. They offered me a job with the firm. Really? Yeah. He doused a pad in the clear liquid and swept it down her cheek. Elena jerked back. It was like an ice cube. Hold still. I've never met anyone like Fernanda. Why didn't you introduce me to her before? She never asked. I'd love to design a dress for her. I haven't offered, of course. I never offer. He wiped off the rest of her cheek and threw the pad into the trash can behind him. She'll probably let you. She says you're the best. She's kind, but I don't think she'll want me to. He took out another pad. Why not? Elena asked. Because I turned her down. You did? Yeah. He drenched the pad and slid it across her forehead. I don't want to work for a perfectionist. She'll watch me too much, and I'm not comfortable with that. What are you going to do? I know her game, he laughed. I got all of the girls' numbers, a full contact list, and I think she knows it. She wasn't happy when I told her I wouldn't work for her. She told me not to let you get into contact with any of them, and you knew the whole time. That's an old business trick. He slid the pad down her nose. You went behind her back too. Henrika told you? She did, and I think she's telling her friends to leave the firm. You have clients now. Close your mouth, Donovan said. You'll make more money than I will. I could. No talking. Donovan moved on to her chin. Why do you have ash in your hair? Did you crash into Lauren? No talking. He laughed. You're wearing a business suit tonight, black with a white draping blouse. Do you want heels? Yes. Good, because that's all I have. He moved on to her makeup, and he styled her hair for her. When he was done, he gave her a spritz of perfume and pushed her out the door into the hall. Fernanda was standing in front of a podium at the end of the corridor facing a swarm of guards and journalists. No, this is a business decision. The team was failing, and the owner was refusing to play its best member. They needed proper management. When will the decision take effect? A man called out. At the end of the season, but the owner has agreed to give us control of daily affairs until then. He'd like to step aside for personal reasons. I will not be commenting on today's events. If there's nothing else, I'd like to thank all of you for coming. With a nod of her head, a line of guards filled the space between the podium and the reporters. There were protests and people shoving one another to get closer, but the men were effective enough that Elena and Fernanda could slip into the conference room while Donovan finished gathering his things. Why did you do that? Elena asked. I'm not going to work with you. And I respect that. Then why? Because I like you and because I respect you. I want to apologize, she said. For what? For pressuring you. I put too much strain on your relationship and that wasn't fair. Thank you, Elena said. That means a lot. You're going to let him play, right? That's why I bought the team. Fernanda rested her hand on Elena's back and led her out the back entrance where Diego and Donovan were waiting in an SUV. Diego was sitting in back, watching Elena with wide, tired eyes. He smiled and scooted over to give her some room, and they rode in silence together, like two magnets caught in each other's pull. When they stopped in front of the house, he got out and held his hand out for her. He took a look back, and there was a moment of what seemed like quiet awe when he saw their tiny kingdom. She jumped down and landed in his arms. He could lay down next to her, and they didn't even have to touch. She could feel the warmth binding them together. Then they curled up, and he took her in his arms. Their bodies intertwined, and she was certain that she was in heaven.
This is an exclusive production of the Romance Fiction Club. We hope you had a good time listening. Please like and subscribe so that we can continue creating free content for you to enjoy. Check out our library for more exciting romance stories. Thank you and have a wonderful day. See you soon. Bye-bye.